Great, I guess that means I should get started. It's 1 o'clock. Welcome, everybody. It's good to be in Chicago. And I went out this morning to get my coffee and just saw so many people walking around the street. I said, I feel like I'm in New York or San Francisco. No, it's a very vibrant city, so very glad to be here. We are also going to be able to see a demonstration of the Chicago Office of Emergency Management at the conclusion of today's meeting, so we're taking this opportunity to go see an actual operation, which we're very, very happy about. But before getting underway today, I'd like to make a couple of introductions. Some of you probably know that we have a new board member, Amy Hess. Amy, welcome to the FirstNet board.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know, she's the designee for the Department of Justice, and she's the Executive Assistant Director of the FBI Science and Technology Branch. I'm sorry I had to read that because it's a rather long title. And she oversees the Criminal Justice Information Services Lab and Operational Technology divisions there. Very happy to have Amy part of the team because of the issues that we're going to be dealing with here. So we're looking forward to your input. Okay, a little technical difficulty. Okay, turn that one off and turn this one on. How's that? Is that better? Okay, great. Yeah, I heard a little like I was on a cellular system in a bad coverage area. So with that also, I'd like to introduce a new addition to the FirstNet team. Sitting to my right is a new member of the team, Karen Miller-Kuwana. Right? And Karen is our board secretary, and I want to take this opportunity to thank Eli Vindendahl for filling in over the last, what was it, Eli, about 6-7 months? Just felt longer, right? But Eli did a terrific job, some big shoes to step into, but Karen has been here for a couple of weeks and already getting a good start on things. She's also serves in a role working directly for Mike Poth, and I like to call myself a cat herder, and I think she's got the role of cat herder as well. So welcome, Karen, to the team. Today we're going to we're going to do a couple of things today. We're going to approve minutes from the March meeting. We had, as you know, a teleconference in March, and we had a number of committee meetings, and we're going to approve those minutes. We have some committee reports on all the different functions within FirstNet. We have a couple of resolutions to approve. And we will have a closed session at the end of the day to talk about a couple of personnel matters. So to begin our tradition of kicking off the meeting, we have a couple of administrative things to take care of, and that is we have to do a roll call, and then we're going to do some statements around ethics and making sure that we're all in alignment as we're in a very sensitive period on procurement. So Karen, would you do me a favor and please call the roll? If your microphone works.
Let's take a guess. We did test these before the meeting, so we apologize. Sue Swenson?
Here.
Jeff Johnson?
Here.
Barry Boniface?
Here.
Edward Horowitz?
Here.
Christopher Burbank? Here. James Douglas?
Here.
Kevin McGinnis?
Here.
Anise Parker?
Here.
Neil Cox?
Here.
Ed Reynolds? Richard Stanek? Terry Takai?
Here.
Dave Mader?
Here.
Suzanne Spalding? And Amy Hess?
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum for each committee.
Great. Terrific. As you know, we had a combined board meeting and committee meetings in March, and so our minutes are prepared a little bit differently than they've been in the past. They're kind of a combined group of minutes. So what I'd like to ask the committee chairs to do now is to just ask your particular committees to review and approve that portion of the minutes. And then tomorrow, as a full board, we'll actually approve the entire set of minutes for the entire board. So we don't have separate minutes for each of the committees. They're combined in all of them. So there was no governance meeting in March, so I'm off the hook on that. I'm going to turn to my left, Chief Johnson, and let you take care of the consultation and outreach portion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I'd like to call upon the members of the Consultation Committee to review those portions of that committee's minutes as issued in your documentation, and the Chair would entertain a motion to approve, approve or amend the minutes.
I move they be approved.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of approving the Consultation Committee section of the minutes? All in favor of that, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries, Madam Chair. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Boniface, how about technology?
Okay, same drill for technology. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes? If you have any questions, now would be a good time to raise those or suggested changes. Any changes? I will then entertain a motion to move the minutes.
I second.
So let's take the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Barry. Governor Douglas, the Finance Committee.
Well, I'll convene the Finance Committee for the same purpose. The essence of the finance portion of our last meeting was a presentation by our CFO. We'll have another one very shortly.
Yes.
With a new update. But Kim brought us up to date on our budget to date on the unmodified or clean audit that was reported, our internal controls, and our 5-year strategic plan. So I'd invite members of the Finance Committee to ask any questions or offer a motion.
I'll move.
I actually have a comment,
Oh,
Governor Douglas.
Breaking our cadence here.
Yeah, sorry about that. I actually talked with Kim about some language in the minutes because it was unfamiliar terminology to me, and she has informed me that it's actually generally accepted accounting terminology now. Right, Kim? Auditing terminology. It's called unmodified.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that those were, there was a different term, but I understand that's a proper term, so no correction, sir.
That's right. Well, that's right. I was looking for the word unqualified, as
Yes,
perhaps you were
yes.
as well. But things keep changing. It keeps FASB in business, probably, to change its terminology.
So with that, I'm fine with the,
Well, thank you. So, and you probably second that motion.
yes, I do. Thank you.
Any discussion from the Finance Committee members? If not, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that portion's approved.
Great. So again, we'll take those portions of the minutes, we'll take a look at the entire set of minutes, and the full board will take a look at those and approve those tomorrow. And then at that point, we'll make those minutes available for the public. Karen, if you can make sure that we make that happen, I'd appreciate it. We now have a special kind of process since we're in the middle of our acquisition process. I think, Mike, you have, I think you're going to take the greatest portion of the meeting reviewing guidelines around the federal acquisition rules.
Absolutely, and it's my pleasure. I would like to take this opportunity to remind each board member and FirstNet employee that FirstNet has decided to follow the Federal Acquisition Regulation, Competition and Contract Act and Procurement Integrity Act in the nationwide public safety broadband security procurement, and that these laws protect information relating to the acquisition. I would also like to remind each board member and FirstNet employee that during the procurement, we are restricted in what we discuss relating to the procurement, both publicly and amongst government personnel. Please bear in mind that during the combined committee and board meeting, we cannot, under any circumstance, either directly or indirectly, discuss source selection information, including but not limited to how many proposals FirstNet received in response to the RFP, which companies may or may not have submitted a response to the RFP, or any assessment of the response to the RFP. Each of us bears a responsibility and must exceedingly vigilant in observing and maintaining the confidentiality and integrity of the acquisition process. Any questions regarding the RFP should be directed to our contracting officer, Stephanie Contact. Thank you.
I thought it was going to be actually longer than that. That was quite brief. Thank you, Mike. No, in all seriousness, I mean, we're in a very important period, and I just want to say on behalf of the board and myself, we take those rules and regulations very seriously. As you know, we've had a compliance program in place for quite some time. I think, Jason, you actually came into FirstNet actually putting the compliance program in place, and we have taken that whole situation very seriously, not only with our own internal compliance organization, but also with the other agencies around the federal government. So we're in a very important period. So we've indicated this before, that if our behavior changes and we're maybe less responsive to people, it's not personal. It's just that we want to make sure that we follow the rules appropriately and we don't jeopardize this very important acquisition. So I just want to make a comment about that. And of course, a meeting wouldn't be complete without reading the potential conflict statement. So we're going to have Karen read that today and make sure that none of the board members have any conflicts that they think would get in the way of them participating in today's meeting. So Karen.
Thank you, Sue. And mine is a little longer than Mike's, so I will apologize. But in advance of the committee and board meetings, the management team has provided the board with an agenda outlining each of the items that will be discussed and decided during this combined committee meeting. The members were also provided with a conflicts of interest assessment, which was produced jointly by the Commerce Department Office of General Counsel and FirstNet Office of Chief Counsel. Providing these documents in advance to the board members allows them to identify potential conflicts of interest and to recuse themselves from participation if required. We will, prior to these committee meetings and the full board meeting, remind all board members of their obligations relating to the conflicts of interest and ask them to identify whether any recusals from deliberations or voting are necessary. In consideration of the meeting today, each member should consider his or her obligations with respect to the appropriate committee, and for some of you that might mean both. This conflict statement is intended to cover all actions and discussion during this combined committee meeting session. With that said, if any board members believe that they must now recuse themselves from either or both meetings, please state so for the record. Madam Chairman, seeing that no one has stated, we can proceed.
Thank you very much. We're now going to go on to the Finance Committee, and I believe we're going to have Kim Farrington, our CFO, give us an update on a couple of items. Kim, I think you're going to talk about financial reports, budget, 5-year strategic plan. I think, TJ, then you're going to follow on and have some discussion around the evolution of the organization. And I think we'll also, in this section, also talk about the resolution for the lease in Boulder. So, Kim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Good afternoon, board members and everyone. I would like to begin this afternoon's briefing on the finances with a look at fiscal year 16 obligations and expenses. Follow that with a look at the FY17 budget formulation process and how that is going. Follow that up with a look at our strategic planning and how we're doing with our 5-year plan, and then circle back around to today and talk about the Boulder facility lease recommendation. So focusing first on where we stand in FY 2016, we're really doing a great job across FirstNet. What you see up here on slide 5 looks a little new to you, I'm sure. In the past, we have presented quarterly information, and we felt that by taking a year-to-date approach to presenting this information to you, that tells more of a story. So this is our new look at how we're going to be presenting the FY16 budget execution throughout the rest of the year. What you see on this slide is a graph with blue pillars. Those blue pillars above each month represent each month's actual obligations. If you follow the blue line that starts in October and moves all the way through September, that blue line represents our obligation forecast for the year by month. Going back to the pillars, if you look at the red pillars, Those pillars represent the actual expenses each month and the cumulative amount. Following that red line that is initiated in October and goes through September, that represents the expenses that we anticipate each month and the cumulative amount throughout the year. The line at the top, the red line, that actually represents our obligations target, which may look familiar to you. That is the $126 million budget, obligations budget, that the board approved last year for fiscal year 16. So that's our target. The green line that you see at the top of the graph represents the total expense target, which also is the expense budget that you allowed us for FY16, totaling $92.1 million. So as you can see from the graph, we are doing very well keeping up with our obligations and expense budget to actuals. As of May 31st, we obligated $57.8 million. This compared to the $62.3 million that was anticipated through May 31st puts us at 93% utilization. So we were within 7% of our obligations budget. The expenses are very well as well. Our expenses as of May 31st were $45.7 million, and that is compared to our budget of $50.9 million. That puts us at 90% utilization, which is within 10% of what we had planned as of May 31st. Moving down to the bottom of the slide, you'll see a blue bar that says percent obligated is 46% and percent expensed is 49.6%. Those numbers are accurate if we took a straight line approach to the budget. However, I would like to point out that as you see in June, there's a spike that we are anticipating. Taking away and normalizing for that spike, we are actually, our percent obligated is 67% of obligations. We are 67% through the year. So we are right on target when it comes to our obligations and expenses as of May 31st year to date.
So Kim, you know I have a question about this in terms of the forecast. I mean, you guys are doing a terrific job, I think, of managing your expenses, and I think we have a culture here that says, if you need it, spend it, but if you don't, don't. So I think that's important. But it seems to me you would really have to accelerate your spending on expenses to meet that end of year target. And would you expect that to need to happen, or would you see a gradual increase every month of level of expenditures?
As you see from the red line that extends from October through September, that's how we anticipate our expenses hitting as each month goes by. So we're not expecting an acceleration. It's just that we're anticipating that spike in obligations in June, and we will naturally have more expenses hitting our books as the obligations are recorded.
Hey, Kim, this is Dave Maynard. Could you explain the uptick between May and June? What's contributing to that?
Yes, we are anticipating a couple items there. First are a number of contracts that will be renewed in June. We're exercising option years. And we also have some grants that are making up that spike.
There will be a X amount of dollars for spectrum relocation grant that we think through the grant award process will probably be awarded in the July timeframe that accounts for one of those tick ups. And to your earlier point, one of the things on the expenses, we are tracking, against a run rate that does suggest, some savings that will then roll into next year, which is a kind of a critical component for our sustainability as we go forward.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so if there are no other questions on the FY16 budget execution, I will move forward to FY17 and give you just an example of our timeline and what you can anticipate for FY17 budget formulation. As you can see, we actually started this process back in March. We actually created formal budget guidance to help streamline this year's budget formulation process. We've had a lot of milestones that we have achieved since we developed that guidance. And 3 of the milestones that I think are very important to the Finance Committee include the last 3 tasks on that timeline. The first is that we will be presenting the Finance Chair with the budget around July 22nd. And we plan to present the budget to the Finance Committee around August 1st. And lastly, we will be presenting the budget to the board, hopefully for their approval, on August 26th. So moving beyond FY17, actually before I go on to the strategic plan in 2016 to 2020, I'll turn it over to TJ, who will give you some information on how we're transitioning and creating this budget for 17.
So a couple of things that the team has been doing. The senior management team has been working across the organization to make sure that as we move into 17, we prepare to be operational. And it's a significant change from where we've been in the last couple of years, and a lot of it started to occur already this year. But really, it changes our priorities and what we're doing, and really has us coming forward with a couple of new things that you'll see in the budget for next year that are not in the budget in the same way this year. We wanted to give you a little bit of a read ahead here at the June board meeting before we get into that. One is really looking at the priorities in FY17, and it's really about evaluation and award and standing up an organization that can be prepared to hit the ground running for that, and that's absolutely critical. It's also important that we continue with what we're doing on the buy-in side of the house and looking at draft state plans, final state plans, and getting to key decisions from governors, which has to occur in FY17 as well. With those 2 things in mind, we've come up with 2 new kind of reorganizations, if we want to call that, going forward that we think will make us operational in a much better way. And the first is the Chief Customer Office. And we've advertised for this position, and we've worked through the process and be ready to announce that formally very soon. But the Chief Customer Office is taking what used to be outreach and consultation and what we've done across the organization with state plans, and adding in a couple of other things, most specifically communications and marketing and what we're doing on that side, as well as product management. This is very similar to what you're familiar with, Sue. I know in the private sector, it's certainly what many of us around the table here have seen as a good customer-focused, in our case, can be very public safety-focused organization. And we want to make sure that all those elements that will interact with public safety day in and day out have that laser focus. So this is a huge change. I think it's critically important. And I just want to actually pause here and see if there's any questions or comments before I continue.
Yeah, I just have a question. I think, I mean, this is a big transition. We've been kind of in a certain cadence since 2012, since August. And so I guess I'm just interested in maybe your comments and comments from the other management team members on, as leaders, what does that mean to you in terms of needing to make that transition? Because it is a big transition.
I think it means a number of things, and then we'll ask others around the table as well. I mean, I think it absolutely changes the focus outwardly from inwardly. It gets from the planning process and the transition process into that operations, and really focuses on end user adoption by public safety and making sure that we're meeting their needs and that we have that laser customer service focus going forward, which is certainly something we've tried to drive into the organization to begin with. But I think it changes very differently once you have a partner on board and we go forward in a public-private partnership and how that's going to operate. It also is important as we pair up in that partnership with public safety, with the states, with our potential partner on the technology side, and that we're able to all work together in that partnership to make this work. And that's going to require us to be lean. It's going to require us to be very agile and fast in what we do. And we have to have that kind of structure that allows us to move at that speed and meet the needs of our customers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Actually, Dave, Rich, Amanda, since you're in this organization today, I would love to open the floor if any of you want to comment as well.
Sure, thank you for the opportunity. I'll go first. As TJ said, we're really going from an organization that was designed to consult and really understand the public safety input and ensure that state-centric federal tribal input gets put into the acquisition process to ensure a representative RFP that when the partners come on board, they're actually providing a solution that meets the needs of public safety. We're transitioning that from that planning and that acquisition focus into an operational focus, where we need to not only ensure that the network that we deploy meets public safety needs, but we also need to ensure that the success of the partner. And we want to make sure that our staff and our focus is ensuring that the partner is successful in deploying the network and meeting the requirements of public safety long term.
I would just add that the conversation we're going to have here in about an hour, when we give an update on the work we're doing currently in consultation, outreach, and state planning, we're already beginning to realign our activities and working very closely with the states and the SPOCs to think about that and the next steps beyond the delivery state plan, and focused on that customer interaction, the customer experience, the adoption experience. And there's already activities that we're able to do now that will get us pointed in that direction. So that transition, as we think about it from the outside, will be smooth and we'll be ready to go.
Yeah, and I would just add, it's continuing to engage the folks that we're engaging today, keep them involved, all the national organizations, the states, but also making that transition to working more at the agency level, getting those points of contact, working closely with those individuals, and how we really hone in and get specific on some of the satisfaction and those kinds of things they're having. So,
Jason.
As someone, as you noted, has been very focused on internal process and compliance, this transition really impacts, I think, how we do business as an organization as well. And although we have always had a culture of operating efficiently with a business mindset, it becomes even more important, quite frankly, as we start to engage formally with the ultimate industry partner that we'll be working with, to not only have that outward-facing operational focus, but inwardly be able to move quickly and efficiently. So we're really looking at streamlining not only our internal processes, but how we work and integrate and coordinate with other agencies within the federal government to ensure that we're able to respond as a true partner to industry and meet their expectations, and quite frankly, meet our own expectations in serving public safety. So I think that's a really important piece of this as well.
Yeah, I think, and I think the board's got to be thinking about that as well, in terms of just what our expectations are of management. And I think one of the key words for me is speed. And I know that that's going to involve taking a look at some of the processes, because I know today we have a lot of things where it seems like there's a lot of people that have to touch things. And I think we need to question, do all those people need to touch those documents to still get the same? I'm not saying to reduce the quality of what you're outputting, but we should really be really diligent about asking that question. I know you guys are focused on that. Jeff?
Sure, thank you, Sue. So on the technology side, we've spent the last, almost 4 to 8 years looking at the technology. LTE is a well-known technology, but now there are certain critical features for public safety that myself and the team are looking forward to validating and verifying from our award how these work, and fully describing those for public safety's benefit and educating them on that aspect of it. So we're definitely transitioning to that phase and working on some of the network policies and things I'll be talking about in a few minutes. So we're definitely gearing for that now as well.
Great, thanks for your comments. I appreciate it. You know that we'll be focused on that. Kim, did you want to add something? You kind of are at the center of the universe as a CFO, and you see everything. So what are your thoughts?
I agree with what everyone has said. In fact, what you'll see in just a few minutes is the themes and priorities for FY17. We also look into FY18 as we're building FY17 priorities, and the budget and where we're going actually fits perfectly within our plan, our 5-year strategic plan. So we are working towards our 5-year plan.
Great, thanks. Go ahead, TJ.
A second element that's really trying to help prepare us for the operational role going forward is looking at having a network program office. And we call this the NPO, but the network program office will be there to be able to handle the key activities to help with 56 RAND task orders and be able to support that public-private partnership that's going to get very busy very quickly. And key elements in task orders that would be around the core network and state plans and things that have to happen right away at the beginning of the award going forward. So to be able to put this in place, we want to make sure that we have the right folks in the right seats to be able to do that we have the right capabilities and talent on board that are going to handle the program operations and the program management that needs to occur as part of that. And so I believe you'll see in this budget coming forward over the next few weeks, those two elements, both CCO and new consolidation of some past roles and some additional new roles, as well as the network program office, which is mostly new roles. The key talent will come from some existing resources. Having that going forward to be able to allow us to execute very quickly come this fall.
Yeah, I'm happy to see that we're putting something like that in place, because you can have your functional organizations, but you need that overlay. I was involved in a deployment of 40 concurrent market deployments, and you really need that kind of coordination. So I think it's going to be really critical. So everybody they kind of serve as a hub. You still have your functional areas, but having that coordination is going to be critical to success. So delighted to hear that you folks are putting that in place.
And as part of this, we worked through the entire management team, who you've heard most of them speak up here today, to really make sure that we're not doing things that no longer will need to be done, very focused on the new activities that need to be done, and really transitioning the right folks who have the capabilities into those roles to be able to be successful. And I think you'll see that in the FY17 budget, that very, very thoughtful on keeping costs lean and the team flat, but at the same point, making sure we have the right skill sets to go forward. And Kim and I have spent the last couple of weeks with the senior team really reviewing the details going into this, and I feel very comfortable that it'll be solid coming forward, and we'll be able to work through your questions.
Great. I'd say one of the characteristics of a program office is people who work in it need to be able to kind of turn on a dime. There's always things never quite happen as you plan, and so I don't know. We should test people's ability to work on just a couple of hours of sleep for several months, because I think that's one of the key requirements to work in an office like that. So that's great. I think we're in good shape. I think we wanted to also, in the Finance Committee here, do a review of the resolution for the lease out in Boulder. I don't know who's going to take that. Kim, you're going to take that?
Yes. Before we actually get to that, just wanted to give you an update on that 5-year plan that
Oh,
I
okay.
mentioned. We do have the 4 strategic goals that we have shared with you previously on the right: the partnerships, stakeholder engagement, innovation, and people and organization. I want to thank Sarah Bryant, Zach Smith, and Jeff Moon. The CFO office, along with the PMO office, have been instrumental, especially those 3, in creating the strategic plan and getting down to this level of detail that I'm sharing with you now. They've created key performance indicators to support those 17 objectives that support the 4 strategic goals you see. We're actually incorporating the human capital planning initiatives into this strategic plan as well. And you might ask, why is it so important that we spend this much time and effort on this? And the reason is because this actually provides the strategic direction for FirstNet, even after contract award of the NPSBN contract. So we're very pleased with where we're going. A lot of input from all the business units within FirstNet.
So I just have a question. I mean, I guess, having gone back to a day job recently, I guess I pay more attention to these things. I always find these strategic plans kind of interesting, but I always worry about how they get translated to the organization every day, so that people in the organization, no matter where they are, can feel some connection to the strategic plan. So I don't know if TJ or Mike or somebody wants to, or Kim, you want to talk about that?
That was a perfect segue to slide number 8, where we're actually linking the plan to performance. So everyone within FirstNet knows how they directly support the mission and goals of FirstNet. We're actually creating, or will be creating, operating plans within each business unit, so each person knows exactly what goals and objectives they're supporting. We're actually creating those KPIs and performance measures along with targets, so people can understand how well they are doing in support of those goals and objectives. And this facilitates better decision-making across FirstNet. It helps the employees and staff understand how well they are supporting this mission. And it also provides a lot of transparency and accountability, not only to FirstNet, but also to the FirstNet stakeholders.
And so if I work in legal and I'm a paralegal, how do I know how FirstNet's doing? other than Jason coming in and telling me?
We are actually going to make this a continuous monitoring approach for actually sharing how we're doing across FirstNet, where we can create quarterly performance metrics and monitor that. We will do it quarterly. In some cases, it will have to be annually, but however routine, we can provide feedback and obtain that feedback so we know how we're doing in support of our goals, the more efficient and effective FirstNet will be moving forward.
No, that's great to hear. I have a funny little story to tell. You know, we put some goals in place in this, like I said, my day job, and we had something called DSO, Day Sales Outstanding, and it's something that the organization hadn't looked at for a while. And so there was somebody in accounting, somebody who did accounts receivable, and she was at our all-employee kickoff meeting at the beginning of the year, and she paid a lot of attention to what our goals were, you know, and she went back and started doing her job, and somebody from sales called and said, oh, yeah, let's just make this payment arrangement for this number of days, and she said, weren't you at the all-employee meeting? Don't you understand what our goals are? And I just share that with you to say, when people really understand that connection, it just empowers them and makes them feel connected. So I like to call it ducks and bunnies, keep it simple, you know, don't make it complicated, because it's really important that everybody understand how they contribute. So I just encourage you to keep going on that, and it's nice to see that you've got that in place.
Yeah, we're not going to allow it to be just bookshelf fodder.
One other thing that I think is really important, and from the early days when we worked together with the board to create core values for the organization, one of our core values is about being open. And that's not just with the public and with public safety and with the states and with our Public Safety Advisory Committee and everybody that we work with on a regular basis, but it also has to be that way inside the organization. And this means that when in doubt, we share everything with everyone, and it's getting that information to everyone in the organization regardless of role. And I think that's so critical because you don't know who's going to pick up on different pieces and really see how the dots tie together. And I think you can only do that if you have all the information.
Okay, Kim, great. You want to do the resolution now?
Yes, we will now do the resolution for the Boulder facility lease. In accordance with the Finance Committee Charter, one of the responsibilities of the Finance Committee is to review any material agreements, to include real estate property leases, and make a recommendation to the board. So as you know, we currently have a lease for the Boulder, Colorado facility. This is a continuation of that lease. This is a 5-year lease with 5 option years. That is standard for GSA leases. We have the flexibility to get out of the lease with 4 months notice if need be. And by locking down this lease, we actually will be saving money compared to the 29% increase that the Boulder, Denver area is anticipating in future years. So my recommendation to the Finance Committee would be to approve of this lease, but I will turn it over to Karen, our Board Secretary, who will read part of the resolution.
So I will read the relevant language from the Finance Committee Resolution number 14. Now therefore be it resolved that the FirstNet Finance Committee recommends that the FirstNet Board approve the new occupancy lease agreement and authorize the FirstNet management team to enter into an occupancy lease agreement with GSA for the FirstNet technical headquarters in Boulder, Colorado.
Well, the members of the Finance Committee have had a chance to talk with Kim and Jeff and propose some questions to them. It was a pretty robust discussion, actually, and we're glad to have had that opportunity. As Kim mentioned, it's a good deal compared to what lease numbers seem to be in the Boulder area, and we have the flexibility to get out, as she noted, after the first year with 4 months' notice. So it seems like a pretty reasonable arrangement. Are there any questions from the Finance Committee of Kim or Jeff or anyone at this point?
No, like you said, Jim, we had a very robust discussion, asked lots of questions, just because the rates are so, let's just say, aggressive there in Boulder, but I think it's because the tech community is really growing in Boulder, and it's becoming, and also there is another industry that's growing quite robustly there.
Literally, yes.
And so it's making the space pretty attractive. So I'm glad we have that discussion. Maybe we should think about, you know, a new line of business.
That would require a charter amendment, but perhaps we could take it up. Ben?
Yeah, I just would like to comment on the process by which this least got to this point, and compliment the team on how thoughtful they were in terms of looking at the kind of space that they needed, having the optionality to exit if necessary in future years, at the same time locking down rates at a, let's call it below market rate, basically due to the relationship they currently have in the building. So the discussion was thoughtful, also included not just the finance side, but it included Jeff's team on the technical side, so we really had an understanding as to what the requirements were. And so I would second the motion.
I'm good.
Any further discussion from the committee? If not, all in favor of the resolution, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and it's adopted, and we've recommended this lease to the board.
Yeah, we'll discuss that tomorrow at the full board and get approval by the full board tomorrow. So thanks for all the hard work on that, and look forward to visiting the enlarged team that now occupies there. I think we have about 38 people there. Is that the number? Okay, good. I think we're going to move on now to kind of the governance portion of the meeting. I think, Mike, you're going to take us through a discussion as TJ kind of teed up with the CCO organization being developed and with the NPO and really moving on to implementation. You know, there's some things that have to change, and I think you have some thoughts about that.
No, absolutely. If we can go to the next slide, whoever has the, who's got the clicker, click. Oh, okay, back up, back. But I'd like to start the governance committee with a riddle to the board first. What does the Game of Thrones, I Love Lucy, Tina Fey, Viola Davis, and FirstNet's Guy Knopfsinger have in common? Any guesses?
Something to do with video.
They have all won Emmy Awards.
Okay, I knew it was something like that.
So we're happy and tickled that Guy, who I think joined you on the tour down in Texas on the 200-foot cigarette boat you guys were racing around on, he, along with the team, he was actually the director, produced, and edited a short film based on the poem of Just a Common Soldier, and they won an Emmy for Outstanding Public Service Award. So we have an Emmy Award winner in our rank and file now. So wanted to acknowledge the great work Guy does, and he actually does all our videos. So we truly have an Emmy Award winning video production system. So I just thought I'd point that out.
With all that talent, he has failed at making you look very good from a distance.
I know. I keep suggesting the soft focus lens, but he's not interested. Next slide with that note. So as we've been talking about, we are in a mode now where we are from pre-acquisition to now preparing for the public-private partnership. As we think about that, and we testified last week or whenever it was to Senate hearing, we truly have, we're in a great position because we have the best and brightest people, but even the best and brightest people, if we're not organizationally structured and don't have the processes in place, we will have greater challenges than maybe is what necessary. But as we got there, we are evolving from a startup to that public-private partnership. You've seen a lot of the accomplishments that we've talked about countless times, and we are in the evaluation process, and we're optimistic that we're going to stay on schedule, but that's not just a layup. There is a lot more work to do, and the organization is focused on that, but the entire organization is not focused on that. We're also pre-positioning for the success. And we are getting into the transitional phase. And so I wanted to just give the board an update. And we talked, and TJ and Kim teased it, of what we're doing budget-wise, because obviously where the dollars are kind of drive the organizational behaviors that we need. So we are focused on a lean, innovative organization. And we're also the structure with our Chief Customer Officer and our Network Program Office and some of the other support functions are still going to be critical, but we're seeing how that ties together to get us into that true partnership of the win for public safety, win for the states, and the win for our industry partners to make us truly successful. So I wanted to, put that out and see if the board had any, overarching ideas. We certainly have some basic tenets, if you go to the next slide, that are kind of the foundational things, but I think there's a lot of different other nuances that we'd love to hear any board's thoughts on.
Yeah, I think I'll kick it off. As you know, I'm kind of maniacally focused on kind of the focus on the end user. Here, I mean, we talk about a lean organization, maximizing revenue, innovation, that sort of thing. And I think a key tenet needs to be, you start with the customer and you kind of work back and you support the customer. Because at the end of the day, without the customer, you really don't have anything. So I think for me, and it sounds easy. It's not. I mean, there's a lot of real discipline that goes to focusing on the customer, the voice of the customer, a continuous process for getting that feedback, because you're going to get customer complaints. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. I mean, when you're in this kind of recurring revenue service business, there's going to be complaints, and how you process that's going to be important. So I think that's going to be a really important tenet for the organization, and more than lip service.
No, right. And one of the things that we always fall back on too is just because it's a partnership does not mean that we are not going to hold our partner accountable and responsible, just as much as we hold ourselves and our organization accountable and responsible to the end customer and to the basic tenets of what we were trying to accomplish. So I think that's a key component, and as we kind of morph some of the organization into that, we're in the luxury of the position that we do have people that are still very focused and very passionate about the mission. And we're going to take all that energy and that knowledge base and some of the institutional knowledge that they're now bringing into some years, 2 or 3 into the process, and try to capitalize on it. But I think that's a key component as we go, because even as successful, and I remain very optimistic, there are going to be some bumps in the road as we roll this out with our partner. And it is going to require a lot of creativity and flexibility and the ingenuity.
Any other comments for Mike on this? I mean, we have a lot of people who've been in these kinds of businesses, so I'd love to hear your comments in terms of, how we, because it's about culture, isn't it, Mike? I mean, it's really about culture.
No, absolutely. We're going into that delivery mode now, and we have to work with industry, with our states, with public safety to meet their needs, because there's a lot of pent-up expectations, so we need to be able to, deliver on that.
Yeah, I guess, for me, having been involved in this since the inception of it, and I know the challenges we have around process, I think one of our biggest challenges to positioning for partnership and being responsive to the people that we're serving, I think we're going to have to get help from the people with whom we operate inside the federal government, because I think this sense of urgency sometimes, because when you're running a service 24/7 and need to have that system up and running, I mean, you have to react very quickly. And so I think we're going to have to start those conversations with people. I think, Jason, to some of the processes and, routing of documents. And I mean, it can't take a week or 2 weeks. It's got to take today. I mean, you've got to get something done today if you have to change something. So for me, I think we're going to start to have some conversations with the people with whom we work to say, let's understand what we're trying to do here. Because in some of the conversations we've had with folks who have expressed an interest in being partners with us, they've expressed concern about that. And I think we're going to have people help us get to this vision. And I think that's going to be one of the challenges for me personally, I think. Jeff?
Madam Chair, I am glad that you're focused maniacally on culture, because I mean, that's really what it's about. Having been a person that's been in the government sector as a fire chief and watching what it takes to make sure you stay focused on your customer, it required a couple things. First, you have to choose to see them as a customer. It's really easy to see them as a victim or a patient or a taxpayer. But the fact is not seeing them that way, seeing them as a customer, someone that actually pays money and they deserve to receive something, even in the absence of a choice, like in a fire department. It's all about the culture and the people choosing to see them as a customer. And I love the fact we're focused on that here, because the fact is the people that we're going to do business for and with is public safety. Number one, they are going to pay something for a service, and that makes them a customer. Second, they're going to have a choice. And it's even more important when they have a choice. We have to deliver on their expectations. We have to deliver on their promises, on the promises that we've made to public safety. But I think more importantly, we're going to do that in conjunction with a partner. And that doesn't mean we're going to take our hands off the steering wheel and our partner gets to take this wherever they take it. This has been carefully designed and engineered in a way that we can ensure public safety is going to get the kind of network we have in mind. And I just want to compliment the staff and the board for staying focused on a culture that is focused on giving people a good service and a good value, but making sure that we proceed going forward in a fashion where we don't lose touch, hence the Chief Customer Officer, and hence the continued focus on our partnership and making sure we stay plugged in. So I want to just thank everybody for not losing sight of what long-term will be the most important thing we do.
I guess the one thing I might add, Sue, is having been in a number of partnerships throughout my career, I think one of the challenges, particularly as you get more and more people involved in whatever your end solution is to sort of get lines of communication that maybe aren't as effective as they need to be. So I think it's important as you figure out how to organize yourselves against these various partnership relationships, whether that's the end customer being the public safety organizations, whether that's our industry partner, or whether that's the states and provinces. I think it's important that you set up really effective lines of communication so that people know that when they communicate through those channels that there's somebody on the other end of that that's going to be responsible and take ownership and all the rest. It's like a well-functioning marriage. The better you communicate, the better your likelihood of success. So I think that's a really important element to think about as you start to structure yourself for the next generation.
I think maybe in all environments, anticipating where the puck is going to be is really the way to run the shop and a marriage. And so, what Mike and TJ and the team are doing is anticipating where we need to be as we go through this next phase, examining the culture, the objectives, the essence of what the organization was set up to do, and making sure that we remain aligned with that. And
this is Suzanne Balding. I've been on for about a half an hour listening, but if somebody's talking right now, I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's Ed. Ed's going to get closer to his microphone so you can hear him, Suzanne.
Great,
Thanks,
thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you, Suzanne. But anyway, I think that maintaining the essence and the relationship and the true reason why we exist as we transition from one phase to the next is core, plus doing so sufficiently in advance to bring the organization in line, to bring the messaging in line to the end customer, in anticipation of what a partner should expect when they are selected, what's going to be required of them. I really think it's compliment to the team to having done that.
Yeah, I would just say one other thing. Again, some of these things become really vivid to me these days, but clear accountability about who owns what. And I think as we transition, I think taking the time to sit down and say, let's make sure we know who owns it and who's accountable for it, because you're going to have changing roles and you can't assume, because you know what happens when you assume. So I think just being conscious of all that change management that needs to occur is important as well.
Great, and we'll keep the board and everyone posted as we evolve over the next month or two. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate the team really thinking about this in advance. Like Ed says, knowing where the puck is going to be. I think you said that in honor of Tim Bryan, right? Just for he was here with us today. It was great to see him. Technology, lot happening in the technology world, Mr. Bratcher. So I think we're due for an update on that. Is that correct?
Sure thing. Were we going to do the PSAC or no?
Oh, are we going to do
we had a PSAC charter update.
Oh, okay. We were going to move it actually.
Move it? Okay.
Oh, Jeff will take it. We were deciding whether to put it in technology or governance, and so I guess we can do it now. Jeff, are you okay with that?
I am, as long as you're okay with me running this portion of the committee.
Yes.
All right.
Oh,
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have before us today in your packet a revised charter for the Public Safety Advisory Committee. As you know, as a byproduct of history, FirstNet has one committee that advises this board of directors, and that's the PSAC. There are a number of verticals and subsets within the PSAC, and we're always adjusting and morphing the PSAC to maximize their efficiency and effectiveness. And what you see before you today reflects the latest iterations in that charter, and essentially they fall into three categories. First would be Section 7, and the Section 7's language was updated to reflect the current structure dealing with the Chief Customer Office, as opposed to the Deputy General Manager, FirstNet, et cetera, or the General Manager, as it were. Section 9 deals with the updated membership details by adding reference to the new proposed federal members from the Department of Homeland Security and Department of Justice. While it doesn't reflect it in this document, how we'll operationalize that is we will be going to our federal members that represent these areas and asking them for recommendation on who should sit here. And it's very critical that we have federal input at the PSAC level on what we're working on, and these represent two of the largest potential users on the federal side. And then lastly, the appendix is updated to include all the new PSAC organization, which includes NLETS, the International Justice Public Safety Network, the National Volunteer Firefighters Council, NVFC, and then the federal members as mentioned. So at this time, the chair would entertain a discussion and or a motion to recommend to the full board the adoption of the modified PSAC charter.
I move we recommend it to the board.
Do you have a second?
Second.
And we have a second from...
No, actually, I had a question.
Did we get a second? I want to grab that first.
Sure.
Yeah,
Kevin
we have a
seconded.
second from Mayor Parker. Amy Hess.
Thank you. I just had a question about Section 9 on the membership. Is that the concern was just whether or not it should be codified in here, just as it is for the non-federal members, that there would be a recommendation, and then, of course, with the appointment by the PSAC chair.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff, you can answer that, but that's really how we do it for all the PSAC members, is just really, we work collaboratively to determine who the membership should be, and so it's just not done independent of that process. So it would be very similar to, Jeff, what we do for the other members on the PSAC.
That's correct.
Okay, I was just, as I said, I'm looking at the language, and the language is certainly codified for the non-federal members shall be recommended by the respective organizations, but appointed by the chair. However, it just says for the federal members, they're just appointed by the chair. It doesn't say anything about a recommendation is codified in here.
Yeah, that's kind of my point about how we'll operationalize it. We'll treat it like we do everybody else. We'll reach out to the experts within that area of discipline and ask for their recommendation.
Suzanne, do you have something?
Yes. So I've just building on Amy's comment. Is there any reason we wouldn't just repeat that language? Such members shall be recommended by their respective organizations. I mean, I understand that that's the way it's going to be done, but we are explicit about it in the sentence before with respect to non-federal members. Is there a reason not to be explicit about it with respect to the federal members?
No, we can do that on the fly if that's important.
That's the intent. Let's just codify it.
Absolutely.
Not a problem.
Great.
In fact, I guess I would like to get an update because I thought that there had been some conversation. I don't know where that stands, Mike or TJ, in terms of, or I think Harlan's in the audience somewhere. There's Harlan. But I thought there had been perhaps some outreach already on this topic. Can somebody update me on that?
We're just beginning, so with the language, then Harlan, as the chair of the PSAC, will be reaching out with Amy and Suzanne. I think there is actually on the DHS side a nominee that has been suggested.
Okay.
And I'm not sure on the, I think Harlan and Amy are just meeting for the first time to have that discussion.
Okay.
No, Harlan and I have had conversations, and we're, yes, so we're engaged on that. Absolutely, that is all happening.
Okay.
It's just a matter of codifying it. What's the recommendation?
Sure. Sure, I just wanted to make sure the process was moving. I mean, we can codify anything. I just want to get people up and working. I want to get the federal membership there. I guess for me, and just having noticed this, it talks about federal membership, but we don't have our other federal organization represented here. Is there any particular reason? Is it just because it's Homeland Security and Department of Justice? I'm just wondering what the logic is that we wouldn't have all of the federal organizations represented on the PSAC.
So Sue, I can take that question. We decided just, again, to keep the number manageable. I think the charter at this point has us capped at 45 members. I think with these two, we're at, what, 42 or 43?
Right.
So again, as I think Chief Johnson had alluded to, in talking with the executive committee, we decided that we'd choose the two agencies that bring the highest number of potential, public safety users. But then we're also looking to stand up a federal working group that would be inclusive of the other federal departments and agencies that have public safety services. So the working group will get stood up quickly after we identify these two members.
Okay.
Hey, Sue, this is Dave Maynard. I'm very comfortable with DOJ and DHS being named and not OMB because of the sort of the charter of the group.
Okay, that's fine. I just didn't want you to be left out, Dave.
Yeah. Well, I think OMB will. I think to the other point, we'll be part of the bigger working group.
Good. Well, I know that Harlan is a taskmaster, so Suzanne and Amy, whoever you put on there, please make sure that they have, right, Harlan, that they've got the time available, because there's a lot of work being done actually in the PSAC and some really good work relative to some of the key activities, particularly from an operational perspective. So really important that we get the right people, designated, because Harlan doesn't get happy when people don't do their work, right, Harlan? So anyway, so I guess with that, Jeff, you can continue the process.
So, Madam Chair, I think maybe, yes, I think maybe the appropriate thing to do, Sue, would be for you to amend your motion to include Secretary Spaulding's comments, and for Mayor Parker to amend her second. Then I'll ask that the operative phrase be read. I believe that'd be procedurally correct, and call for the vote, or is it the other way around, Jason? Call for the vote and then read the operative language? What do you want?
Nope, you had it right the first time.
Okay, There we go. So, Sue, do you amend your motion?
I was going to say I amend my motion.
Mayor Parker?
Yes.
So the motion has been made and seconded, and at this time, and I confuse myself here, Jason. At this point, we will have the operative phrase read. We will call for the vote, and the voting members are Sue Swenson, Barry Boniface, myself, and Terry Takai. Would you please read the operative phrase?
Now therefore be it resolved that the Governance and Personnel Committee approves and recommends that the board adopt the revised and amended PSAC charter with the notation that the language will be amended to include that the federal members shall be recommended by their representative organizations and appointed by the chairman of the FirstNet board.
Thank you.
Yes. At which, I'm sorry, I had to insert that this correct copy of the resolution, amended as presented to the board by the FirstNet senior leadership, copies of which are attached hereto as Exhibit A.
Thank you, Karen. In that case, all the members of the Governance Committee in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Any noted abstentions? Back to you, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you very much. That'll be great to have those members on, and I don't know what the process is to get it done, but I would encourage us to move quickly to get people on there if we can, to get them assigned. I know Harlan has some assignments for them, right, Harlan? Great, let's move on. I think we're ready to move on to technology now, Jeff. I know you've got a lot going on in terms of network policies, the lab, work that PSCR is doing, our friend Derek Orr and his buddies over there, and a little early builder update. So the floor is yours.
Absolutely. So thank you. You hit my agenda for me already. So I'm good to go. We'll jump right into FirstNet network policies. So as part of the act that created FirstNet, it also requires us to establish network policies. And that's really all it says in the act. But how we've interpreted this is these will include those core and RAN technical and operational requirements within these policies, some of the network management standards and procedures, back office, user requirements, billing, et cetera, monitoring and compliance of these regarding network management, operation, and use, and some of the public safety usage and user training policies. So we've been working over the last several months across FirstNet, not just within the technology team, but also within the customer office team as well, on developing these draft strawman network policies. And we're set to release this initial delivery of these with the state plans as well once we're past award. And again, going through some of the key items for these network policies, they'll constitute the basis for network interoperability, reflect a lot of the early builder lessons we've learned, public safety feedback and requirements that have been put together over the years, as well as the PSAC task teams that we've done over the last 2 years as well, and the efforts that the PSAC has brought to bear in helping flesh out these network policies and some of the operational aspects. Provide development and operational guidelines for our partner and this partnership moving forward, and also importantly establish the criteria for FCC and NTIA to evaluate the opt-out states' alternative RAN plans as part of our process with the state plan. So this is a very serious effort within FirstNet, along with everything we're doing related to the RFP. Again, these will really define the interoperability, security, and operability of this nationwide public safety broadband network. And it's a really critical item that we know will be needed to delivered with the state plan as those states ponder their decision whether to do their own RAN implementation. So I'll pause there on the network policies topic if there's any questions. We've got, again, these straw men development is in process. Once we have our final award, we will actually finalize these policies because we don't yet know all the specifics until we have our partner on board for some of these critical elements.
So, I ask this question every time. Obviously having whoever the partner is going to be is important, but there's obviously some things that are more, I would call them more routine, that would be applicable to regardless of who the partner is. And I think as we talk to the key officials in all the states and the governors, I think it's going to be really important that they have at least an inkling of where we're going with these network policies. And I don't know if we're talking to them about some of the, just at least from a concept level, if it's not down to the dot the I's and cross the T level. So I guess it always feels to me like we should get these done sooner rather than later. So educate me on why that's not the case.
We are definitely doing that, and I believe they've already worked this into their consultation as they go out and describing this process. We're also working closely with NTIA and the FCC, who have to evaluate the proposed RAN opt-out plans. But we're definitely the ones that aren't dedicated from the partner or need the specifics from the partner. We're working on those now to get those in place moving forward. Did you want to talk about the consultation side of that, Rich?
Yeah, I think that's correct. We are developing positions, opinions, policies to the best of our ability. That those things are not directly dependent on the partner's input based on the bids we're going to receive. And we're in weekly dialogues with both the FCC and NTIA to ensure that they have the right information and the right structure to make good decisions.
Dave, did you have anything to add to that?
I was just going to say, I'm going to talk about this again in a few minutes also, but our consultation task teams are the vehicle we're using to have that dialogue. And a lot of what's happening right now is the introduction of these topics to get the states up to speed. Even though they're bringing experts to the dialogue, the education and information exchange helps inform them about where we're headed and where we're pointed with us. And that's been the vehicle we're using to help do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure thing. Any other questions on the policy side? So I'll move to the Boulder Lab. So that goes hand in hand with the resolution that will be presented tomorrow for the Boulder long-term lease. We're also ready to complete or actually I should say start the construction for our test lab in Boulder as part of that activity. We're focused on the trust but verify model. So we are not planning to recreate anything a potential partner already have. We will be focusing on those mission critical public safety features, quality of service, priority preemption that were critical to this network that aren't really done in the commercial space now. We want to make sure it's operating the way that we've been working the last several years in developing those models and feeding into the network policies as well. So as part of this in the RFP, we actually requested in section L of the RFP that the potential partners tell us what equipment they will be providing to us as part of this award and in our test lab in Boulder and how they would support it and move that forward. So this includes the network core capability, local band 14 base stations, devices, anything that's going to be touching the network that's critical for public safety usage, we'll be doing that validation on. And again, focused on those mission critical features. So what will we provide? Again, the quality assurance for that, validation and verification of these features and functions, the device approval. So also in the legislation, there's this required list of certified devices in partnership with NIST. We'll have some dedicated resources on that activity as well for those band 14 specific devices. Acceptance testing of some solutions and the solutions for public safety that we'll be putting in the nationwide network. And also to enable future application development environments. So again, we're focused on some of the open API development and capabilities that would be available to all the worldwide application developers that want to take advantage of some of the critical features for the nationwide public safety broadband network. So that kind of gives a high-level overview of what we're doing in the FirstNet test lab. That leads into the next question. I might take it from Sue before she asks it, is what's the difference in our test lab at FirstNet and the NIST and PSCR labs that they've had for many years over there? So this really highlights the differences in what we're doing. Again, we at FirstNet will focus on the validation and verification of this nationwide public safety broadband network features and functionality, development of applications, device testing. NIST and PSCR are now transitioning to what's in the legislation of the same act for them to do their research and development activities with the $300 million that was received out of the AWS-3 auction. So again, they're going to be focusing on accelerating public safety broadband development across a number of key areas that I'll discuss in a second, and some of those longer term 5 to 10 year vision features for public safety that are going to be critical on this network moving forward. Location-based services, et cetera. And then we do plan on collaborating with them as they're working through these R&D challenges. So this slide highlights those R&D funds focus for PSCR and what they're doing. And this was a big element of their recent conference that they held out in San Diego on these 5 topic areas, how they're going to do this challenge and prize approach versus the traditional government grant approach, which isn't ideal for this type of agile development that we're looking for with R&D. So these are the 5 areas: mission critical voice, location-based services, public safety analytics, user interface and user experience development, and then LMR to LTE integration. And again, they have the $300 million. The 2 that are called out specifically in the legislation are mission critical voice and the LMR to LTE integration. The other 3 in the middle here were developed based on their stakeholder meetings with public safety, industry, and others on what are the key things that even though $300 million sounds like a lot, it's really not a lot in some of these key areas that we need to push for development. So that's where they focused on these 3 areas moving forward. So I'll pause there. That kind of gives an overview of the test lab versus what PSCR is migrating to now, and take any questions.
No, it's just helpful to understand the difference on who does what. And I mean, everyone knows that we have a great collaborative relationship with PSCR,
Absolutely.
which is great, so we can take advantage. But they're looking over the hood of the car. You're going to be focused on making sure that what we have today is working kind of as promised, as
Absolutely.
designed. Okay.
Absolutely.
Hey, Jeff, on this prize front, which I showed specific interest when we were out there
Yeah.
trying to collect my $300 million with little to no ideas. But how is that going to, I mean, is the notion that these prizes are going to help fund the development of some of these things that people bring to this process?
Absolutely. The goal is to fund within industry based on the collective of public safety, FirstNet, and others that will be participating in the review of some of these challenge participants, is actually that, to accelerate some things that we know public safety needs broadband-wise. A great example Chief Johnson, you know, the location-based services, 3D geolocation, you know, that's the holy grail for the firefighting community as well as the other disciplines. So helping seed R&D funding into maybe a company that has a great solution but no resources to really push it across the line. That's the goal of this project.
Thanks.
One thing too, Barry, I think that's so important on this is that it's really trying to drive that anyone who has a solution will come forward under the challenge or the prize model versus contracting for somebody to build a solution.
Yeah.
And it's something that has really changed the way that the more agile parts of government are really focused on getting multiple solutions and fast solutions and agile solutions that are really done quite quickly. And I'm really glad to see PSCR and in their consultation with FirstNet, their consultation with the PSAC, Chief McEwen and others, as well as with public safety, that they've learned that's probably the best route for them to go to get the quickest solutions that actually meets the needs of public safety.
And Jeff, just to give you a moment to speak to this, you said something very important in that about helping push something across the line. If I recall this correctly, these funds are far less constrained than we might historically be accustomed to. And these actually can be seen as an investment in building a sustainable future that serves public safety's needs.
Sure.
Can you speak to that?
No, absolutely correct. That's how it was structured. This isn't a brand new thing. It's been done in other areas, and they've actually brought in the head GSA from GSA that did these challenges in different areas to the program. So she'll be helping set this up, and it's a very agile method to do it versus we're going to put out a $100 million grant, please try and fix this problem. So yeah, absolutely. And the other part about it, TJ alluded to it, the PSAC has a working group that'll be assisting this on the PSCR side because they're, as part of their duties under the Act, they're supposed to work with FirstNet, the PSAC, and public safety to help push this forward to ensure that it's going towards the public safety needs.
Yeah, Jeff, this is, Neil. I think when I look at this, I get excited about this because this is what will make everyone's life better. When we were in Houston and we saw some of those applications that were on that trial, and when I get asked a question, what's FirstNet? And I just say it's going to make your life much better. And I give a couple examples that we saw down in Houston about being able to be routed to the right hospital quicker, where there's a room waiting, things that this network can use to make everybody's life better. And when you start doing these types of things and people start thinking out of the box, knowing...
You're not able to hear this on the phone.
And to think that... What? So when you look at this, though, and you think about these applications and how they flow down to the public, because this network will always work, and you can always be assured that public safety is going to have priority and preemption. And then you have these applications that overlay on this that affect all of our lives. And then you think, you know, the events of yesterday, you know, over in Istanbul, really makes you awaken to what's really out there. So these type of applications, these types of challenges to develop these types of things by those out there, knowing that first responders are always going to work, means a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, the one that really excites me, great comments on the public safety analytics. It's kind of a high-level term, but it's really this data analytics side of things, you know, artificial intelligence. There's a lot of data out there that's not readily accessible by public safety and the first responders. Having a dedicated network where they know they'll have access to data, that's going to be a big area moving forward for public safety in general.
Hey Jeff, Neil brings up a good point with the excitement around this. How are you communicating this program so that people are aware of it?
Great point. So the week-long, and it's really Derek and the PSCR team had their week-long kickoff in San Diego 2 weeks ago for their annual stakeholder meeting, and that was really, you know, pushing this and how they're going to move this forward. They have a lined out and outreach and social media and other elements to really try and drive this going forward. It'll be on all the traditional government, Fed Biz Ops, those type things, as well as additional areas to reach some of those industry participants. And there's already been a great uptick in, you know, interest from the industry, even non-traditional public safety industry. They were out at the Consumer Electronics Show this year, actually, as well, giving some updates, and had a lot of interest from There's a lot of brilliant minds out there working on problems that they don't realize actually apply to public safety. So some of those light bulbs are going off now, and they're like, oh, wow, I may have some access to some money to help push along the development of this application or thing that I'm working on now. So I'll move to the early builder projects. Again, these are, I'll say, humming along at this stage. We have dedicated resources. Most recently, the Houston Rodeo. We learned quite a bit in the Houston Rodeo on the use of broadband and some of the key things that may not come to mind. I think the interesting one they found was lost child. How do you find lost kids? And I think they shared this. They were sharing pictures, over this broadband network, and as a parent, I can understand they disappear, off in the ether. So that was an interesting use we hadn't really thought about, but sharing those pictures and being able to reunite the families was a big one. So the projects are all in various phases of their key learning conditions and documenting a lot of the key areas that we've asked for from these, going back to Sue. I think you helped negotiate these 5 leases, so we're in that stage now with each of them. And again, those are feeding into our network policy development, some of the technical aspects. We're learning quite a bit about some of what I'll call the initial implementations of some of those key public safety features with quality of service, priority, and preemption. So that's all driving a lot of our efforts now and how we develop those moving forward.
And the early builder, just maybe not everybody knows this, probably a lot of people do, but maybe people listening don't know that this is actually part of the PSAC. And so there's a lot of feedback that goes through the PSAC. They're actually a working group within the PSAC, which gets information out to a really broad audience. So they're not just little projects working on their own. There's a lot of visibility to them.
Yeah, great point. There is a dedicated working group. I believe Todd Early chairs that now within the PSAC and provides the updates and works closely with them on that as well. Great point. Any other questions? And then finally, I put this one in. So we had a Bring Your Kid to Work Day, and this is our new, in the bottom left, this is our Future First Responder Group, our FFRG. So there's actually 2 dogs there, Fox and Hudson, and the staff member on the bottom right is Jennifer Harder, who works for us now. And she actually runs search and rescue dogs. So these are real search and rescue dogs that are used in situations. So we brought a lot of kids in and did some search and rescue with the kids, let them play with Band 14 devices and some LMR devices there on the right that we had. And the top right picture there is them doing some of the search and rescue activities out in some of the warehouse space.
Well,
So
I can see an opportunity for one of those projects. I think we're going to have equipment that can be fit to animals in addition to people.
good point.
Or,
good
got to
point.
have trackers on them or something.
Good point. So great event. So with that, that wraps up my overview. Any other questions I'll entertain now.
Any questions or comments from the board? All right. Moving on to outreach and consultation. I think we're going to have a couple of updates, Rich, from you, Amanda, and Dave. And just a couple of comments. This, I think, of all the organizations at FirstNet in terms of transformation and change is probably going to experience the biggest change just in terms of operationalizing this. I think TJ mentioned, I just want to really emphasize, really doing things around product marketing and product management. I know Rich is, working with a lot of people and TJ to work on that. But I think this is going to be fairly dramatic, and so looking forward to the transition. But some updates in terms of what you guys are doing would be great.
And before Rich starts, what I'd like to do is just take a moment and formally introduce Mr. Rich Reed, your Chief Customer Officer for FirstNet.
Great. Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to the challenge of being successful in this role. And it is going to be a challenge, as we all know. Very quickly, just getting into where we are today, the current state, as we all know, has really been focused on a couple of factors. One, doing outreach and education, making sure public safety understands the promise of FirstNet. We found that even before we could start consultation, which is required by the Act, we had to raise the level of awareness of what FirstNet was to be successful. And we've continuously done outreach and education to make sure that the information is broadly available. We've been executing consultation for a couple of years now, ultimately with our goal of developing an acquisition strategy and ultimately an RFP that meets the needs of public safety. This acquisition will result in the ultimate development of a state plan, which is simply the value proposition and the methodology for deploying the network in the state. As we get to that point, we're very close, as we all know, to achieving that vision. We recognized, and TJ's mentioned it, and Mike's talked about it, the need to transition from a state-centric strategy to a customer service-centric strategy. And that's really the genesis of the Chief Customer Officer. And our responsibility in the new Chief Customer Officer organization will be to ensure that we have the right staff, the right skill set to ultimately keep a pulse of the satisfaction of the deployment, the devices, the pricing, the service, and the accessories to ensure that the successful deployment of the network as well as the successful adoption of the network by public safety. So we're going to repurpose many of the skill sets and relationships we've used over consultation and outreach and really leverage those relationships we've developed over time to be a successful customer service organization, and that's my charge. We're going to have to develop the infrastructure to manage those customer service elements. As we've talked about, the accountability of owning that customer service function is going to be something that we're responsible for, and we're in the position now of identifying what those skill sets should be and making sure that we have them on board through the recruiting process. Another unique function that we're going to have in the CC organization is product development, product marketing. The successful adoption of the network is going to be critical that we have the right devices and accessories necessary to incentivize people to use the network. The CC organization is going to be responsible for hearing the needs of public safety, really identifying how they use mobile data today, what they use in terms of equipment, and really being futuristic in terms of what they're going to need in the future so that we stay ahead of that need and make sure our partner is successful. The adoption goals that we set forth in the RFP, I feel that the customer service organization is going to be really critical to identifying those key agencies that are ripe for adoption to make sure we understand the sales cycles for mobile data at the state, local, federal, and tribal level. Really understanding how they buy, when they buy, what they buy, and how much they spend, and making sure our partner is aware of that so that they can target the right time in which to engage public safety agencies. There's an entire life cycle component associated with the success. We're going to be responsible for that. And ultimately, we're going to act as that success interface for our partner as well as other organizations within FirstNet. And I'm going to go through these slides relatively quickly. Mike already told me that I need to speed up my, my presentation, which he always does. So we're going to go and do a very quick state plans overview. As we're all aware, the purpose of the state plan is to really deliver a value proposition to the state. The statute's clear that the governor has the right and responsibility to make a determination whether the proposal that FirstNet provides is something that they're going to execute on, or they're going to make a determination of taking on the responsibility of deploying the radio access network in their state, essentially executing the opt-out decision. To make sure that we give them the right information, we went through a series of consultations, data collections, and ultimately developed an RFP that's going to result in significant information that we're going to package in what we're calling a state plan, but it's essentially the value proposition or the proposal that FirstNet's going to provide the governor that outlines how we're going to deploy Band 14 in their state. In addition to that state plan, we recognize that there are other federal agencies that need to essentially have the value propositions or the details associated with that radio access network deployment in the state. NTIA has a responsibility to evaluate a state's opt-out proposal, as well as the FCC has the responsibility to evaluate a state's opt-out proposal in terms of its ability to interoperate with the FirstNet core network. So we understand that when we develop these state plans and provide that detail to the state, we also need to give those federal partners the ability to look at that same information in a usable way to ensure that interoperability takes place and that each of those federal partners have the information they need to appropriately evaluate a state's counter proposal. When we talk in terms of partnership, it's also important to recognize that FirstNet sees this partnership not just as a private partnership between a public-private partnership between FirstNet and the partner, but a public-private partnership between FirstNet, the partner, as well as public safety. We're not going to be successful if it's just a public-private partnership between FirstNet and the partner. Public safety has to adopt the network. We have to deliver devices and services and capabilities that show value to public safety before they're going to adopt. We have to develop that relationship. The elements that go into a state plan are pretty clear. The Act says that we need to deliver essentially very little information in terms of the state plan. We need to essentially tell the governor that we've completed the acquisition process, provide details of that acquisition, and the funding determination as applied by NTIA. Frankly, that's not going to be enough information to be successful or to provide a governor the comfort that they're going to need in which to make a good valued decision in terms of our value proposition. So we recognize that some information like coverage, capacity, deployment schedule, devices that will be available, some key salient factors are going to be important to make sure that that governor has what they need to make a decision.
I am, yeah. Get it done.
I'm sorry, on the
Someone
phone?
on the bridge? Someone have a question on the bridge?
Thank you, I'll move on. So we intend to deliver that proposal to each governor in each state via an online portal. And we intend to deliver that information in an online portal that has essentially two sides. One is an open side that makes the information that should be publicly available public. Think of that as any type of sales portal that you would have as a wireless provider or mobile carrier. But we also recognize that some of the more controlled information, the information that is more sensitive, contains particular information that might be important to the partner to protect, Trade Act secret information, business plan information, things that should be more controlled, needs to be put behind a password protected area. So we intend to have a portal that's dual functioning, where we have public information public and more private information for the governor and the governor's staff to be held privately. Ultimately, this leads to that very important 90-day window, this decision that the governor is going to have to make. The Act is very clear that once we provide that state plan to the governor, they have 90 days in which to evaluate our proposal. This time frame is critical. Once we deliver that information to the governor and they go through this evaluation process, it's going to be imperative that we are available to really explain to that governor, the governor's staff, and key influencers what we meant, why we meant it, and how we came up with this information. And we are committed to do that in the CCO organization. We want to make sure that we're available to really relay the value proposition of that proposal. And ultimately, we hope that results in 56 opt-in decisions, 56 desires to have FirstNet and its partner deploy the network, and we start deploying Band 14 at that time. So I think everybody's aware we went through a very, very robust data collection to really lead up to the proposal. And we took that information and we made it available to all the bidder community via a reading room. And we wanted to make sure that that information that came from the states, federal agency, and tribes was provided unvarnished, unfiltered to that bidder community, so they really understood what the states, territories, and tribes told us was important to them. But during this time, after we ended the initial data collection period of performance, we heard from states and territories that it was a valuable process for them to reach out and interact with their agencies and their counties, and they wanted to continue doing that. And we made it very clear that the information that goes into the RFP had to be locked down at some point, but if it was valuable to the state to continue to interact and to continue to collect data, we would look at leveraging that information if they chose to voluntarily continue collecting it at the time of state plan development. So we've set another deadline in which to close that data collection standpoint, and that's going to be 9/30/2016. And that's a voluntary data collection point where we would evaluate whether the information that came in from the states and federal agencies was appropriate or reasonable to influence what goes into a state plan. So in terms of getting to the state plan, we wanted to make sure that the bidder community really understood the totality of information we were looking at providing the state. So we took very much a kitchen sink approach at identifying the data elements that we had heard through consultation and through interaction with our CTO organization about what we thought was important to share in terms of RAN deployment with the state, as well as what information that was relevant to the core network and what should be shared with the states. So we documented that in the state plan template attached in the RFP as J19. We also wanted to make sure that we included the portal information on how we intend to deliver that information and provided some guidance in attachment J18, where we gave the bidder community the expectation that we would develop an online delivery. As I mentioned, the decision points and how we're going to share this information we wanted to make sure we documented that and it's well understood. So the Band 14 EPC or core infrastructure has always been well understood, I believe, that it's going to be a FirstNet responsibility to develop and deploy the distributed core infrastructure. So that is a FirstNet responsibility. We intend to provide some of the details of that both in the public section of the portal as well as in the closed section of the portal. So for example, we would not want to disclose information in the public section of the portal that might create a vulnerability for the network. So we were going to make sure that we document the types and details of the core infrastructure that should be made public, and then control the information that we think should be made private. And there's no decision point there. In terms of RAN deployment, as I said, the governor can take on the responsibility of deploying the radio access network in their state. So in terms of RAN deployment, we're going to document how we're going to deploy the RAN in the state in our proposal, and we're going to make that available to both the public side in terms of proposed coverage, and on the private side in terms of deployment schedule and how we're going to deploy within the state. And the decision point is at the governor's level, and they're going to make the decision on whether FirstNet should take responsibility for deploying the network or whether the state is going to take responsibility of deploying that radio access network. And then lastly, we shift to adoption. Just like any network provider, there is no mandate to use the FirstNet network. There's simply a value proposition we're going to deliver, and each agency or each individual, each public safety entity will make the decision on whether FirstNet provides value to them in terms of coverage, capacity, use, cost, all the things you would use to adopt a new service. And this is a real shift, because once we get past that governor's decision to deploy the radio access network, this becomes an individual sales decision. This becomes an individual purchase decision. And each individual agency or public safety entity will be able to adopt FirstNet based on its value proposition. And that information will be available via the public portal, and that will be an adopt or do not adopt decision. So now we get into the post-award process. As everybody knows, we get to the final contract award, we make a best value award. We're going to do some day one task orders. These day one task orders are going to be centered around planning and deployment of the core infrastructure, developing the state plan, and developing the state plan delivery portal that I've mentioned several times. We're going to go through the process of working with our proposed partner to document the final information that needs to go into those state plans. And we're going to, at that point, go out and execute on a promise that was made by our Vice Chairman, Jeff Johnson, for several years on socializing or reviewing the state plan information with the states. The promise has been made that no one will be surprised by the information we provide to the governor. So we're going to go out and socialize that information, review the state plan draft with key influencers within the state, and make sure that everyone appreciates the value proposition that we're going to put forth in the state plan. We're going to go through a robust but fixed review process. We're going to do that in a fixed time frame to ensure that we can get through the process in a quick, efficient manner across all 56 states and territories. And we're going to take the information that we receive back from the state, those key influencers, the state single point of contact. And we're going to do that in partnership with our provider, our vendor, our partner. We want to make sure that as we go out and review these draft plans with the states, the partner has the benefit of hearing the feedback from the states and are able to articulate the decisions that went into developing that state plan. And we do that in partnership together to make sure that everybody's on the same page and there's no game of telephone going on. We're then going to go, and we hope we get good feedback from that draft review process. We hope everybody says that this plan is awesome, it meets all of our needs, please execute Band 14 build out in my state. We're then going to come back and do our final preparations for that finalization of the state plan, and we're going to make that available to every governor in one shot, one time frame, a single delivery of that state plan to the governor. It is important that we deliver all 56 state plans at the same time. We want to start that 90-day window of review at the same time to make sure that when we get to the end of that 90-day period, we have certainty around who's going to take on responsibility for deploying the network. And that is our ultimate goal, is to bring certainty to that process. So as I mentioned, once we get past that governor's review and we have certainty, the governor has made the decision to either allow FirstNet to deploy the network in their state, or has made the decision to take on the responsibility of deploying the network. A couple of things happen. In the states that choose to let FirstNet deploy the network in their state, we're going to write a task order to our partner, and we're going to start deploying Band 14. We're going to start very quickly deploying Band 14 and making the services that come out of that deployment available to public safety in each state. In the states that choose to take on the responsibility of deploying the network, several things occur. First of all, we enter into a new window that's defined by the Act. The opt-out state has 180 days in which to develop essentially a counter proposal. They have some requirements. They're going to have to go out and do their own RFP. They're going to have to identify the resources, the funds, the technical expertise, and the partnership that they're going to use to deploy the network and monetize the spectrum within the state. And they're going to have to provide that information ultimately to the FCC after that 180-day period for a review of the interoperability functionality of their counter proposal. The FCC then can take that counter proposal, and we enter into a really unknown period of time. It's currently undocumented on the amount of time the FCC will take to review that interoperability showing. After the FCC completes this interoperability review, the opt-out state has the ability to engage the NTIA. The NTIA will review the ability for the state to execute on their proposal. They'll review whether the state's plan actually is sustainable, is reasonable, is appropriate, and if the NTIA finds that the plan, the counter proposal is executable, the opt-out state would have the opportunity to apply for a spectrum lease with FirstNet, as well as for a grant application in which to help sustain or to offset the cost of network deployment within their state. The thing to note is those are unconstrained timelines. We feel very strongly that the time frame associated with getting through those processes are significant, and the impacts to public safety in each state are significant. The shortest path to radiating Band 14, quite frankly, by several years, is the execution of the state plan FirstNet provides. So, any questions before we move on to outreach and?
No questions. It's just like this is going to be a very. Oh, I'm sorry, Terry. I didn't see you.
Rich, I just had one question. How are you intending in what we'll be sending to the governors to address the inevitable questions that they may have around economic development? How will this impact their state, not just from the standpoint of delivering public safety communications, but from an overall business perspective? Will there be a part of what we provide that will address that question?
So what goes into the state plan, we're still evaluating. Obviously, a lot of it's going to depend on the information that we receive from bidders, as well as the depth and fidelity of information that we receive from the bidder community. But we have every intention of messaging to the governors the value proposition, and that value proposition is inclusive of the economic impacts to a state. Absolutely. So we're going to move on to outreach and consultation.
All right. Well, thanks for the opportunity. I'll give a pretty brief update. I'm going to focus on where we're at with our discipline-specific and association outreach, quickly recap our spring SPOC meeting, talk a little bit about tribal engagement, and then highlight a little bit on our communications work. As you can see with the first slide here, we're continuing to increase our number of engagements with the public safety community. I think this quarter alone we had over 150 engagements, so we have well beyond, or are looking to double what we did last year. And again, when I share that, that's work that we're doing across the board, the leadership team, and various staff across all the different offices. We've also been leveraging some of the PSAC members and SPOCs and other key stakeholders when we've been doing some of these outreach engagements to help kind of supplement our messaging, which I think has worked really well. And I would also note that, you know, all this engagement is in addition to everything that the SPOCs are doing, you know, across the states. Again, as Rich alluded to earlier, really working to focus these engagements on building advocacy for FirstNet and support for our efforts and what we're doing. And then, of course, very importantly, preparing the user community for adoption and kind of making sure they understand the timelines and some of the associated decisions that are coming forward. Looking specifically into our discipline-specific and association outreach, we continue to target the national events that are typically hosted by the major public safety associations, all of which are on our Public Safety Advisory Committee to reach, you know, these broad groups of users. This slide here just focuses on a very small subset of some of the events we've done over the last quarter. I know Sheriff Stanek isn't with us here today. He's wrapping up a lot of heavy engagement with the sheriffs this week out in Minneapolis, which has been great. Again, the work we've been doing there is just continuing to answer specific questions about the network, of course, as best we can, given where we are in the process, building relationships and continuing, I would say at this point, to really validate the needs and desires for the network. We learned a lot, of course, through the consultation and outreach we've done to date, which was incorporated into the RFP. So I think at this point, we're just continuing to validate a lot of the feedback that we've already heard. And of course, continuing to build excitement as we're getting closer to reality of the launch of the network. In particular, with the subject matter experts, the public safety SMEs that we brought on board in the fall, I was looking back at some of the engagement the three of them have done, and just between the 911 and the EMS side, I think both Bill and Brent have reached about half the states between statewide or regional events just in the past 6 months, which has been great to supplement the efforts of our regional team and the SPOCs. There's a lot of national fire engagement between those various association organizations, so Mike's been a little more focused there. But Dave will talk a little bit about metro engagements, and I think as we proceed forward, kind of the second half of the year and looking into next year, we're going to get him a little more engaged with some of the major cities and some statewide conferences. I also wanted to share that we went through a pretty lengthy interviewing process for a law enforcement senior advisor to replace the work that Josh Edeheimer had been doing. Really pleased to see a lot of interest in that position, a strong candidate pool. And the new law enforcement advisor will be starting on July 11th. So looking forward to bringing him on board. I think it'll be a pretty quick ramp up and getting back engaged. We've maintained our focus with the national law enforcement events, but similar to what I mentioned on the fire side, getting more engaged with some of the metro areas and the statewide events as we proceed forward. I wanted to touch just really quickly on our spring SPOC meeting. This was our third SPOC meeting that we've done. Largest attendance to date, over 175 attendees from nearly all the states and territories. And you can see some other participation there that we had on the slide. I think this meeting in particular was really timely. We spent a lot of time the first day talking about the state plan development and delivery process, some of the information Rich very quickly went over. We did that in smaller sessions, allowed a lot of time for feedback and discussion, really to make sure that the SPOCs and their teams had a good understanding of sort of what's ahead the next several months and into next year. We also used it to launch our consultation task team effort on quality of service, priority, and preemption, which Dave will talk a little bit about. Also spent some time hearing from Jeff Bratcher on the technology updates, and we had the PSCR team out there as well, which I think people always enjoy hearing from them and the great work that they're doing. We got really good feedback on this meeting of the folks that attended. We had, I think, 75 responses to our survey. Over 90% said the meeting exceeded or met or exceeded expectations. And as you know, some of those folks can be a little critical. So I think that was good feedback. Probably the biggest area of improvement or kind of complaint that we got was just some of the lack of detailed new information, which I think everybody understands kind of the position that we're in. Folks are eager to get those details on cost and coverage, which we're getting closer to, but just don't have quite yet. So thank you to the board members. I think we had 6 board members that were in attendance that participated. I know folks always enjoy hearing from the board and having their involvement. And we're looking to do the next one around mid-November with a quarterly webinar that we'll hold in between then. Very quickly, just
Hey, Amanda,
touching.
Can I
Yes,
just
go
ask a
ahead.
question? From a timing perspective, I would just ask, and I'm sure you're thinking about it, but timing, I think, of the next SPOC meeting is going to be critical relative to the acquisition process.
Right.
And I think we're going to need to really keep that in mind. So I just want people to know that that's just tentative because we've got a lot of things that precede that.
Yes, yes, we've been having a lot of discussion about that, so thank you. Lastly, I just wanted to touch very quickly on our tribal outreach, again, which has been kind of two-pronged. The additions of Margaret and Adam to the team, who are our tribal members, has been really helpful. They've done a lot of work. I think of the 34 states that have tribes within their boundaries, they've hit over half of them in terms of having engagement directly with those, many of those tribes, either hand in hand with the SPOC or supplementing the efforts of the SPOC and their team. So they've been doing a lot of work to make sure tribes are coming to the table, they're involved in the planning, they're educated and helping to bridge some of those relationships. We've also been leveraging the tribal working group and all the associations that they bring and have been thankful for many of them helping to speak on our behalf and having FirstNet on the agendas at many of their conferences. So looking forward to continuing that engagement, and I know Harlan will talk a little bit more about that tomorrow during his PSAC update. The last thing I just wanted to do was just highlight some of the great work the communications team has been doing under Ryan's leadership. You can see a sprinkling here of some of the videos and a lot of the great content that we've been putting out on the website. So kudos to him and his team and the collaboration across the office that has been going on there.
I don't know what Kevin's looking at, but I'd like to see it.
And the last thing I just wanted to highlight in terms of a recent update is we just launched a FirstNet page on Facebook, which, as you guys all know, is a pretty popular social media tool. We'll be putting out a blog later this week to share a little bit more about the page and the link and encourage folks to follow our page and participate in some of the conversations on there. So just wanted to mention that. I will turn it over to Dave now, unless there's any questions. All right, to cover the consultation updates. Thank you.
I know we're running out of time. I'm going to work hard to move efficiently through my slides, but there are a couple things I really want to take some time to highlight. You saw Rich's slides on the pathway that we're about to embark on to get from where we are today to where we want to be with the delivery of the state plans. And really what we're doing in consultation is the formal and informal engagements we're doing with states and stakeholders to get us to that point, to prepare them for that day and to really work with them to get ready for the delivery of those plans. You've seen this slide from our last discussions where we've reported out on how we're driving the team and states through our consultation process and the activities we're embarking on in order to achieve that. And you see here the list of the outputs that we're engaged in. I'm not going to touch on those really much today, but I do want to talk about what I think some of the results are and some of the outcomes from these outputs. I think there's 3 significant results that FirstNet is getting out of these engagements. One is we're able to bring about a dialogue about FirstNet, about our process and our planning to key decision makers and key influencers in the states. It's a really important part of the process. You see this happen in our governance body meetings, our executive consultation engagements, and really gives us a chance to talk in depth about the RFP timeline, about the state plans process that Rich described, and a lot of the slides that he showed today are those that we bring to those dialogues. And we're getting very good feedback from states that that discussion is helpful as they think about how to plan for the arrival of the state plan and think about the issues they need to get ready for as we go through the planning process. The second, I think, key outcome from this consultation program is that we're able to obtain critical information about states and about stakeholders that brings, I think, into sharp focus the people and issues that we need to work with in 2016 and leading into 2017. All the work that you see us about to do to get to deliver these state plans, having us have a very good understanding of who those people are in the states and what their most important issues are, helps us then deploy our resource and deploy our team to tackle those most important people on the most important issues. So that's, I think, a key takeaway comes across in all of these consultation engagements, whether it's a consultation task team or an executive engagement or our governance body meetings. And then third takeaway or third result from these is that we're able to actually reach and connect with those key influences that we're uncovering as we shake the trees and turn over stones. We're able to connect with them, engage with them in a material way. And in the last month, our executives and team have had, again, significant conversations with state CIOs, with state chiefs of staff, with individual governors, with metropolitan public safety executives and leaders, all those people who are going to be, again, as we look ahead to deliver the state plan and look ahead to the deployment of the network, critical to both the governor's decision and critical to the adoption goals for the network. So again, driving towards those results in our program this year, and I think we're well underway, as you can see from the results here, of achieving those milestones. I do want to take a few minutes to talk about two specific tactics that we're engaged in right now to help us bring about this consultation discussion. The first is around the consultation task teams. We've talked about this at the previous meetings, but we've recently launched this program designed to really connect and consult with experts in the states around those network operations management topics that Jeff talked about earlier and you asked about, Sue, earlier. And it gives us a chance to connect with those experts in a small group setting and really have a very rich dialogue around those topics. The first one we have launched is around quality of service, priority and preemption. We're taking advantage of the work that the PSAC has done through Harlan's leadership and asked states to use that as a backdrop of the work that PSAC's done to do those engagements. We have was successful in launching this program through a series of first pilots in Texas with Todd Early and in Washington with Bill Schreier. States were able to launch this unique way of doing this consultation. We're now well underway. We completed the Region 6 engagement last week, the Oconus engagement last week, and just today they're finishing the Region 1 engagement. So these regional engagements around QPP well underway, and we'll get results from all these as we look ahead to the SPOCFest at the end of the year. And last slide I want to talk about are the metro engagements, the metro consultation we're engaged in. And really, back to the December board meeting, Chief Johnson, where you really, I think, best articulated our desire this year to expand our outreach while targeting our consultation. A lot of that really comes to life through these metro consultations and our efforts to really reach those people, again, who are going to be most important to the governor's decision. We've gotten lots of feedback from states that those major city police and fire chiefs and other public safety executives are going to be, the governors are going to look to them for their counsel, and they'll also be critical to adoption of the network. So we've been working with the professional associations like major city chiefs, metro fire chiefs, U.S. Conference of Mayors, major county sheriffs, and others to help have discussions about this engagement. We've worked with the SPOCs and the SPOC teams to begin scheduling those, and we've executed 3 pilots, Portland, Oregon, Atlanta, Georgia, and Montgomery County, Maryland, where we have tested the format, tested the materials, and really use this as a place to get, again, very rich dialogue with those key players who are going to be important to FirstNet, important to the states, important to governors, and important to us going forward.
Hey, Dave, just a comment, and maybe it's for Amanda and Rich as well, is a group that's not represented here today is the Government Affairs Group, and I think you guys work hand in hand with that team that's a little bit larger, but I think, you guys are really kind of linked at the hip, and we don't often talk about them, but they're pretty critical in this process as well.
Thank you, Sue. I was actually just writing myself a note I wanted to add on to Dave's comments. You hit the nail on the head. We work very closely with Ed Parkinson and his team in government affairs, and their work is not just the traditional legislative affairs, Hill-related work. They're very engaged at the state level, preparing governors, staff, key influencers of the pending state plan, delivery within their state. So I just was writing myself a note to interject that. Absolutely critical, and we are in very close collaboration with them.
Yeah, I just want to mention that because sometimes they're just out doing things, and I know they're a critical part of your team, and we're operating a little bit differently, right, TJ, from what we did before on that.
Absolutely, and they're running very quickly, just like the Chief Customer Officer team is. And Drew Delaney, who's here today, he and I spent the weekend at the U.S. Conference of Mayors Conference, and the amount of coordination to make sure we get the right meetings with the right folks and are able to follow up with the Metro engagements has really been very effective.
Any other comments, Dave?
No, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board on outreach, state plans, consultation? Great. Appreciate everything you guys are doing. Obviously an important part of just getting people educated on what their options are, what the facts are, and like we said, we want people to make an informed decision when the time comes. So obviously what you're doing is critical of that. So please thank all the people that aren't here today for everything that they're doing. We really appreciate it. With that, we're going to go into closed session. We are going to come back and adjourn, but we're not going to be reporting out anything. So there would be, you in the audience, won't be anything to hear back. So if you want to depart at this point, that'd be fine, but we'll come back and officially adjourn. Thank you for your attendance today, and thanks for the people who are listening in. Great. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Q2 FirstNet board meeting. We're delighted to be here in the wonderful city of Chicago, and had a great time yesterday over at the OEMC, a good tour to see what the city's doing there, and I think it just, not that we need more encouragement to keep on the path that we're on, but it gives us a real motivation to keep doing the work that we're doing in terms of understanding how it can enhance the things that you're doing. So we're pretty excited, and we're excited to have you here today. We'll hear from representatives from the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago today, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm pleased to say that here we are in the summer of 2016, and I'm pleased to say that we're on track with our strategic roadmap that we communicated to everybody in 2014. So here we are 2 years later, and we're on track, on budget, on schedule, and pretty excited about where we are, having just recently received proposals from potential bidders for the FirstNet network. There's really three key areas that we're focused on these days. Obviously, we're doing lots of things, but I would tell you that obviously we're very focused on the evaluation of the proposals. That's a key focus area for us for the next several months so that we can make an award later this year. We're continuing the good work on outreach to try to reach all the appropriate constituents at the local, state, federal level to make sure that everybody understands what FirstNet is about and to get feedback from those folks, so that work will continue. We're enhancing that outreach to make sure that the key decision makers in this process who will be involved in this later this year will, as I say over and over again, will make an informed decision and have the facts. And so that outreach activity is very, very important. And then the last thing, and Mike talked about it a little bit yesterday, we'll talk about it some more today, is getting the FirstNet organization ready for the transition from planning to execution. We're going to be moving into an operational mode, and so we really need to be thinking about how the organization needs to be prepared for that. So we're working on that now so that on day one after the award, we can hit the ground running. So a lot of good work been done to date, and I want to thank everybody in the FirstNet organization, and frankly, around the organization. We get a lot of help from a lot of folks in all organizations. I want to thank everybody for their support and continued effort to realize the vision that essentially started, Chief, probably, I'm trying to think how many years ago. Is it 8 years ago, 9 years ago? So it was a twinkle in the eye of folks like Chief Johnson and other folks and Chief McEwen and other people in the public safety community. And to be here today talking about evaluating proposals, I think is a real milestone. So we should all feel very good about that. Still have lots of work ahead, but pretty confident about what we've been able to accomplish and what we're able to accomplish going forward. We have some administrative duties to take care of this morning before we get started. And I think we're going to start with think we're going to start with the roll call. So, and I'd like to introduce, actually, before roll call, I'd like to introduce two new members of the FirstNet team. Amy Hess, to my left, is a representative of the Department of Justice and is in the FBI. And Amy is going to bring, along with her staff, a lot of capability and a lot of resource to us. So we're delighted to have you, Amy, on the board. And we also have a new member on the FirstNet team. To my right, Karen Miller-Kuwana, and Karen is not only the board secretary, but also, I'd like to call her the cat herder within FirstNet. You know those jobs, we've all had them. And so she works directly with Mike and the executive team at FirstNet, but keep the trains running and make sure, they've got a lot on their plate and make sure everything's organized, and delighted to have Karen on the team, so welcome, Karen. So now you can conduct the roll, Karen. Thank you.
First part of voting. I'm going to call roll. Thank you. Sue Swinson. Present. Jeff Johnson.
Here.
Barry Boniface. Here. Ed Horowitz.
Here.
Christopher Burbank. Here. James Douglas. Here. Kevin McGinnis.
Here.
Anise Parker. Here. Neil Cox. Here. Ed Reynolds.
Here.
Richard Stanek. Terry Takai.
Here.
Dave Mader. Suzanne Spalding.
Here.
And Amy Hess. Here. Madam Quorum, we have a, Madam Chairwoman, we have a quorum.
Great. I've been called worse things. Anyway, we have a couple of administrative things that people who have attended these meetings are quite familiar with, and we have a special one today with Mr. Poth going to read to us some caution around the acquisition process. I think it's just important to note that early in the days of FirstNet, we established a compliance program around the rules and regulations having to do with federal acquisition, and Mike is going to read us some special admonitions this morning.
Thank you. I would like to take this opportunity to remind each board member and FirstNet employee that FirstNet has decided to follow the Federal Acquisition Regulation Competition and Contract Act and Procurement Integrity Act in the nationwide public safety broadband security procurement, and that these laws protect information relating to the acquisition. I would also like to remind each board member and FirstNet employee that during the procurement, we are restricted in what we can discuss relating to the procurement, both publicly and amongst government personnel. Please bear in mind that during the combined committee and board meeting, we cannot, under any circumstance, either directly or indirectly discuss source selection information, including but not limited to how many proposals FirstNet received in response to the RFP, which companies may or may not have submitted a response to the RFP, or any assessment of the response to the RFP. Each of us bears a responsibility and must be exceedingly vigilant in observing and maintaining the confidentiality and integrity of the acquisition process. Any questions regarding the RFP should be directed to the contracting officer, Stephanie Contact. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And just to emphasize that, this is a bit of a change since we're in the middle of the acquisition process. So I want to make sure that people don't feel offended when we don't answer your questions and we refer you to the contracting officer. So I think it's really important that you understand we take this very seriously. We put a lot of work into this acquisition, and we don't want anything either conscious or inadvertent to affect where we are today. So just important that you understand how seriously we take this. Karen, I'd like you now to read the other administrative activity having to do with potential conflicts. For those of you who are not familiar with this, we're also very sensitive as board members around any potential conflicts that we may have. Several of us have a long history and a career in the world in which we operate today, and so we take this very seriously as well. Karen.
Thank you, Sue. In advance of the committee and board meetings, the management team has provided the board with an agenda outlining each of the items that will be discussed and decided during this combined committee meetings and board meeting. The members were also provided with a conflict of interest assessment, which was produced jointly by the Commerce Department Office of General Counsel and FirstNet Office of Chief Counsel. Providing these documents in advance to the board members allows them to identify potential conflicts of interest and to recuse themselves from participation if required. We will, prior to these committee meetings and full board meetings, remind all board members of their obligations relating to the conflicts of interest and ask them to identify whether any recusals from deliberations or voting are necessary. In consideration of the meeting today, each member should consider his or her obligations with respect to the appropriate committee, and for some of you, that might mean both. This conflict statement is intended to cover all actions and discussion during this combined committee meeting session. With that said, if any board member believes that they now must recuse themselves from either or both meetings, please so state for the record. Madam Chair, seeing none, we can proceed.
Thank you. And before we proceed with the business of the day, we have some minutes to approve. Yesterday, the committees actually, we have a combined set of minutes that took into consideration the March meeting teleconference that we had, and the minutes are actually a combined set of minutes. So yesterday, the committees actually reviewed their portion, approved that, and so before the board today, you have a set of the combined minutes of the March teleconference. And so I would welcome any comments, revisions, suggestions before we consider a motion for approval. Hearing none, I would move that we move the minutes of the March teleconference. Do I hear a second? Second. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Minutes approved. If you would make sure that those are available to the public, I'd appreciate it, Karen. So as I said, we're in the beautiful city of Chicago. I was walking around early yesterday morning and really felt like I was almost in New York or San Francisco, just a bustling city, and just great to be here. I appreciate the great weather, because I know that it can be, the week before, the week after, it looks like it, and you know, and it's interesting, having been at the OEMC yesterday and watching the news this morning and seeing the truck accident on the Skyway. It was great to be at the OMC yesterday, because I could imagine what was happening in the OEMC this morning because of that particular incident. But Neil Cox, who is a resident of Chicago, is delighted to introduce, I think, Neil, our guest this morning. So Neil, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just talk a little bit, as Madam Chair indicated. I am a resident of Illinois in Chicago, and I came here in the mid-'80s, and I came here to build the first cellular system in the U.S. And this is where cellular in the U.S. was launched. And I remember going to my, my office, and all of my engineers had their feet up on the table, and they said, "We're done." I said, "What do you mean we're done?" He said, "Oh, we have 19 cell sites, and I have a letter from Bell Labs that says the system can hold 100,000 customers, and marketing says they can't sell 100,000 customers, so we're done." And I said, "Well, I don't think so." So we kind of went on a campaign, and I kind of got labeled kind of an idiot, but I went around and said, "You know what, we're going to put a phone in every woman's purse and every man's pocket." And you had to have that belief it could happen, and it did. And the thing that Illinois had contributed to that was almost all of the first in cellular were done in this state and mostly in Chicago. We learned about how to split cells, how to make capacity, things that at the time scientists and engineers said couldn't happen. We developed RF engineering skills. We learned how to shape the waves. We went from analog to digital. And it all happened here in Chicago first. And I'm so happy that my colleagues here on the board selected Chicago to have our board meeting, because this is such an important era in the wireless arena, and an important area. And now we have the opportunity, 30 years later, almost 35 after we launched the first cellular system, we have the opportunity now with this spectrum and with this network to make everybody's life better in the U.S. And with what I saw and what you've done with the state and what the state has done around the OMC, this is an opportunity where I expect leadership, you know, to come out, and the thought process to come from the community, from all the first responders on how to use this network, because people have to think outside the box. I mean, when we first launched, we launched the first text messaging in Norway. It never worked, but it took the kids and a generation to make that text messaging work. With this network, and the thing that we're able to do is to have this nationwide network for first responders that we can think outside the box, always knowing that the first responders' phones and devices are going to work. And that's so important. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to introduce our speakers today because I expect, in this room, there's going to be a lot of leadership as we continue with FirstNet from the state of Illinois, and I expect it to continue to be the leader in wireless. So that's my kind of the commercial on my attaboy and attagirl for all the people here, representing first responders in Illinois. We have a great opportunity here to move this forward. So with that, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, which is Roger Heaton. He's Illinois Director of Public Safety. He didn't want a lot of fanfare, so I took a lot of his fanfare to talk about, how proud I am and that the board is here. And so Roger, the floor is yours.
We just play musical, Mike.
Well, good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Cox. It's great to be here, and on behalf of Governor Rauner, I welcome each of you, members of the board and the executive leadership team for FirstNet to Chicago. It's certainly nice for us to host you here, and we're delighted that you've taken the opportunity to have a meeting here in this city. This is a state where we're working pretty hard, feverishly, I often say, to elevate our use of information technology systems, to expand our information security capability, and frankly, to improve our information sharing between all of the players, certainly in the public safety system. And despite some of the challenges that you may have heard that have presented themselves in our state's historic budget situation, the administration and many others in the state are committed to ensuring that we have public safety systems that are robust, and that we capitalize on all the advantages that technology provides, especially in the public safety arena. We do have, in spite of those fiscal challenges, extraordinary cooperation between public and private entities and between local, state, and federal partners, especially in the public safety arena. And we certainly recognize the potential that having a sustainable, interoperable wireless broadband network for public safety so that we can transmit voice and data communications in real time, seamlessly, will really be an asset to the country, certainly to us here in Illinois. We have, as a result of this being a strong interest, and to the entire public safety team, we've engaged in some pretty substantial outreach in this state to start to educate folks and to get input from them about what this state should do. We've been out to over 80% of the counties. We've got 102 counties in Illinois. We've been to 82 counties. We have reached out to 66 different public safety agencies at 31 state conferences and have reached over 15,000 public safety officials throughout the state. We have a website that promotes the program goals and objectives that we have, and we've conducted this effort since almost a year ago now. Our first FirstNet state consultation meeting was in July of last year. And I think these steps show that we're serious about being fully engaged in maximizing Illinois' consideration of its best options for a communications network that can promote public safety. So we've got a key part of our team here today. Don Karoff is the chair of the Illinois Terrorism Task Force, key leader on our FirstNet team. General Tate Nadeau, I'm sure there'll be introductions of them in a moment, but we're delighted to be here, and I'm looking forward to this being a very successful meeting. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, and welcome to Illinois. It's a privilege for you to be here, and you know now that you're going to be, this is the future home of the 2016 World Champion Chicago Cubs. So now's the time to get your souvenir gear. This is the time to go. What I'm going to do over the next few minutes, I'd like to talk about FirstNet and how it will be implemented here in Illinois. I kind of want to frame a little bit on an issue called governance. And this is an issue you've probably heard in other states of how this fits into the big pie. As Mr. Cox talked about, Illinois has a rich history of developing systems. Each one of those systems has governance structures. And for us to truly see the value of FirstNet, we're going to have to integrate this into the bigger picture. And I'll talk a little bit about this. I have a few slides. I'm not going to read the slides as I go, but Illinois, again, has had a rich history of interoperability. I believe the Illinois State's ISPRA network, the Illinois State Police Emergency Network, was one of the first statewide land mobile radios implemented in the country. It's a high-band system that is still used today, but now it has converted over to the 700, 800 megahertz system. But if you look at the board there, it's interesting. When I was preparing to talk today, I looked at our statewide interoperable communications plan, and our vision matches exactly what you just mentioned today and what FirstNet wants. We want a statewide ability to interoperate regardless of the forum. And Illinois, from the very first day, we've never looked at it as a police, fire, emergency management. It's a partnership. And it's nice sitting here with, I'm glad the city of Chicago and Illinois are both sitting together, because this is reflective of how we were from day one. We've always worked closely together. Chicago and the state, we had to work together. We started that on the ISPRA network, and we're continuing that today on the FirstNet outreach. It is a true partnership of making sure this is truly a system that all public safety in Illinois will benefit from. We've had a few milestones I wanted to point out. If you look at the screen, we have a few things I think that are really reflective of where we've gone as a state. The first is that in 2003, following the tragic events at 9/11, Illinois took it seriously, the ability to reach what the 9/11 Commission commanded, basically, is that we have to have common systems to talk together. So Illinois used Homeland Security funds, those first batch of funds that came out following the attacks, and we started looking at how can we develop systems, not only land mobile radios, but data, strategic technology reserves. Again, to address the core goals of FirstNet is to make sure that all first responders have access to interoperability to save lives, save citizens following an event. And that has transpired. If you look at, we've had, over the years, we have developed a statewide interoperability executive board. We have rolled out statewide assessments, as Director Heaton talked about through the FirstNet. We have reached over 15,000 public safety officials have been part of this outreach. And I believe when you say Illinois is one of the leaders, I think that's the key, is that we've engaged them. We have from very early on, even though if we didn't have the information, we were truthful with public safety and saying this is what we see. We're trying to let them know what's over the mountain as best as we can tell. Let me talk a little bit about governance. I truly believe for Illinois and for any state in the country to truly implement FirstNet, there has to be a solid government structure. Those of you who have been involved in land mobile radios and data communications know that each one of these systems requires its own governance structure. But the problem is that there's never been a movement to how do you link all these governance together. FirstNet required a governance structure. But how did that relate to our land mobile systems? Is it the same? Were they supposed to be different? And unfortunately in Illinois, we fell a little bit in the trap is that we started creating our own silos of governance structures. And for FirstNet to be truly beneficial and to really hit its full potential in Illinois is that we have to match all those together. And that's been something that we have worked steadily over the last year to try to work closely at. I talked a little bit about the problems here is that we have multiple structures. We have individuals that serve on the same boards. We have redundancy across the way on governance. We're competing for funds. We're competing for the attention of the precious time of first responders. So we have to do a better job of that. The challenges is to sustain. We need to link governance structures. And we just need to prevent duplication. I think of anything that kills us most is that duplication of efforts as it comes to governance structures. Talked a little bit about the governance structure now. We have a statewide interoperability coordinator who has been the glue so far. Unfortunately, though, we shouldn't have a system that relies on a single individual to try to pull all of this together. We have multiple structures. But the good thing is, in Illinois, we have passionate people that care very much about the interoperability system. But I think the last dot point I have is something that I would like to take a couple seconds to hit on. Traditionally, we look at communications and those involved in governance at a very tactical level. And FirstNet is asking traditional communications, interoperability people in public safety to do something that they're really not completely comfortable with is looking strategic. Tactical is easy. We can tell you about which button should be where on a radio. We can tell you the megahertz of a radio and how there's cross interference. We can go through those types. We can talk about, you know, P25 compatibility. But if you ask those same people to try to describe where you need to be 10 years from now, you will get a blank stare. That's just not in the public safety arena. We don't think like that. So this has been a challenge for us as going forward, is that when we develop governance, is that the governance is the here and now. You're asking us to look at what's the future going to hold without regards. You're asking us from the FirstNet board is to look beyond the mountain. Look for whatever you think you want it to be. That's where the FirstNet's going, and that's what we're trying to implement. This year, we were approved by the National Governors Association to be part of a multi-state effort to look at how we can start combining the governance structures, how we can start linking those together. And that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at over the next year quite steadily with other states such as Alaska, Idaho, I believe it was Tennessee as part of the process. And what we're going to try to do is try to look at how we can start linking these silos together to have a true governance that can lead us not only for FirstNet, but also for land mobile radios. It's going to be very tactical. It's going to be taking people from tactics to strategic. And it's going to be difficult because so many of our governance rules are formulated through law. And how do we quickly change laws to allow us to link governance structures? Another error that or problem we're going to fall into is that with governance structures, because they are in law, it creates boundaries to what they can and cannot do. So we have challenges to link forward to make sure that we create a playing field so FirstNet can be a challenge or can be a success. The last slide is something that I don't want to take too much of your time. I know you have a busy schedule. But as I was putting the presentation together, this struck me. And this spring, I accompanied a group of high school students, 80 high school students, which was a nightmare, to New York City. And it was interesting, these rambunctious show choir students, we took a tour of New York and we went to the 9/11 Museum. And I don't know how many of you, the board, have been there. But to see the looks on people's faces when you walk into this museum was priceless. Myself, I hadn't been there. I didn't know how I was going to react. But when you walk in there, you start looking through the basement of World Trade Center 2. You look at the first thing you see when you walk down the steps. They show a map of the city of New York. And they show all the public safety officials that arrived on the scene coming from everywhere. You know, what the 9/11 Commission report says that if we have these horrific events again, we have to be on the same page. People have to be able to seamlessly interoperate. The future is not the land mobile radios. The future is FirstNet and how to provide technology so that we will not repeat the problems of the past of people showing up on the scene not being able to communicate together. That reminded me that after all these years, maybe as we've gone along in our preparedness for Homeland Security, maybe we've lost track a little bit of what's the fundamental goal. And I think walking through the 9/11 Museum taught me again how important it is that we all have to be together. Fire, police, emergency management, private sector, non-governmental. We've got to be on the same page. We've got to have the greatest technologies, and it has to be universally used across the state and across the country. So with that, I'd like to thank you for being part of the welcoming you today, and best of luck on your meeting.
Thank you very much, and thanks for reminding us. We get reminded every day of that, and I don't think we lose sight of it. I appreciate you having everybody step back for a moment and say, why are we doing all this? Sometimes I think we get lost in the detail of what we're doing, and we lose sight of the purpose, so I appreciate that. We also have Chief McEwen here today, who is the chair of our Public Safety Advisory Council. They're coming after. And so I think we're going to do a PSAC presentation, and then we'll come to the Chicago representatives after the PSAC update. And the PSAC is doing some important work. For those of you who are not familiar with the PSAC, it's a group of about 5 people representing all walks of public safety, and now we're going to have some federal representation on the PSAC. They've been doing some important work for us as we think about the implementation of FirstNet. Some of the things that you talk about in terms of agencies working together and thinking about a cohesive approach, the PSAC is a great forum to deal with some of these issues, and they've done some good work. And so I think, Chief, you're going to update us on the current work that the PSAC is involved in. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. So On behalf of the full PSAC and the Executive Committee, again, I want to express the appreciation for your leadership and Jeff's leadership and the support of the whole board in the work that we have been doing on your behalf. So as many of you know, the PSAC, you know, because I'm talking to the public here, not only to the board, is a federally mandated committee. It's the only committee, as Jeff pointed out yesterday, that has been created by the board, and we take that very seriously. And I wanted just to say that other than the internal committees of the board, so in all of the members are volunteers, and we take that seriously. So you get a lot of good work for practically nothing, for nothing. And I think sometimes, you know, that's really very good because people are very motivated to give you the best advice that they can give you. So I'm just going to go quickly, in the interest of time. You remember at the last board meeting I mentioned that we had 2 active task teams, one on local control and one on identity, credential, and access management. And those 2 task teams are now just about to wrap up their work. They've been working since January. And you will be getting a report probably early August. We expect to finalize the reports at the end of July. I think the most important part of that is the interaction with Jeff Bratcher's technical team and some of the people, and we've been educating each other. So in other words, many of us in public safety don't understand a lot of the intricacies of cellular technology. At the same time, many of Jeff's staff come from that world and don't understand the intricacies of public safety. So we've been learning from each other, and I think that's been very valuable. And what I really believe is the value of this is that while this interchange has been going on for the last 6 months or so, all of that has been feeding into this RFP process. In other words, it is informing the people who will have to make the right decisions to make this happen for the future and to make sure this is a dedicated public safety network. So I think that those are all really good things. I won't go, again, these slides were set up with, you know, they're kind of a repeat of what I told you before of who the members are. I think it's important to remember that every one of these PSAC members on these task teams that volunteered to do this, they've spent a lot of hours, not only in we've had weekly calls and a face-to-face meeting in Boulder, but they do a lot of research and they prepare themselves, so they've been really working good. So this is the ICAM group, and this is the local control team. I wanted to just mention that Chris Lombard, a captain from the Seattle Fire Department, chaired the ICAM group, done a magnificent job in, as you said, herding the cats. And Barry Fraser from San Francisco has chaired the local control task team. As you know, we also have a very robust group of early builders. We have 5 organizations who have spectrum management leases from FirstNet and who are actually delivering and building out portions of this network to show us the early lessons learned, things that we are learning as we go along, so that we'll save time as the real build out begins. And I think this is important. Todd Early is currently chairing that, and Daryl from the state of Texas, and Daryl Ackley from the state of New Mexico, who actually is the current chairman of the National Association of State CIOs, is the vice chair. And I think recently we've really begun to see the value. We have monthly calls with all of them, and they are exchanging information between themselves of lessons that they're learning in the state of New Jersey, state of New Mexico, Texas, Los Angeles, and Adams County, Colorado. And they're each doing different things, and they're learning from each other. All of those lessons are going into Jeff Bratcher's team's database bank so that we don't repeat those mistakes, and we learn what really works good. So I think that's really good. This slide just kind of shows how everything fits together. I mean, all these pieces fit into what you're trying to do as a board. I mean, you're focused on building a nationwide network, public safety network, and that's what we're doing, and all this is, connected together. Following the spring SPOC meeting, the tribal working group met. We had a day-long meeting in McLean, Virginia, and we have a new chair of that group. I think I reported that to you before, and they're getting themselves better organized. We are reaching out to bring in some additional organizations. As you know, the primary principle of this is that there's over 500 recognized tribes in the country, federally recognized tribes. We couldn't have a working group of 500 people, so what we did is we organized this with people who represent organizations of tribes. So they are either communications organizations or IT organizations or public safety organizations of multiple tribes, which brought us, to a fewer number of people to interact with all those 500 tribes. I think it's working pretty well, and we look forward to keep the consultation issue. We're trying to wrap the consultation into the tribal working group so that they're connected. I think that's very important. The last thing I wanted to talk about, you mentioned in your introductory remarks, is the creation of a federal working group. You will be hopefully acting on some charter changes for the PSAC later in the meeting, and that will serve as the foundation for us to form a new federal working group. We've wanted to do this for quite some time. It took a while to figure out, just exactly how we wanted to proceed. But you have been involved, Sue, and Jeff, with my discussions about how we're going to do that. And yesterday, Amy and Suzanne were engaged in the discussion about the charter change to enable this. So probably as early as next week, I'll talk further to Suzanne and to Amy to finalize that and to get the new two federal working group, or federal PSAC members on board from representing the whole Department of Homeland Security and the whole Department of Justice. They will serve as the chair and vice chair of the new federal working group, and then we'll proceed to actually identify the other members. So I think, we're working with the FirstNet staff and Chris Algier, Amy or Amanda and others to develop the best strategy. I kind of explained to a couple of people yesterday that, the state and local public safety have always felt that making sure that the federal sector, all the federal agencies that do similar type of public safety work are included and are interoperable with all of the rest of the people on this network. And this is where we had to bring them into this, because otherwise, they're off here and we're over here, and we want them all to be. It's kind of like you talked about earlier from the state of Illinois, and we heard yesterday from OEMC, is the best way this works is when you coordinate everything together, and that's what we're trying to do. So that's my report, and thank you very much.
Good. Any comments from the board or questions to Chief McEwen? Just a couple of comments. For me in particular, having been on the FirstNet board since its inception in August 2012 and having negotiated the spectrum lease agreements for the early builders, it's actually pretty rewarding for me to see where those projects are today, and not so much just of learning internally, but I think they've been able to use these projects as demonstration projects for some of the people in the community. I know that Fred Scalera in New Jersey has done a lot there in terms of getting out and publicly using this during events and actually showing, the demonstration. Todd and the people down in Harris County have been very active in terms of when we were in Houston, as Mayor Parker knows, in December, we had a visit with the Harris County folks, and all the agencies came together, and they're actually using the technology in the patrol cars and in different instances. So I think it's been really good to not only learn from it for our implementation, but also I think for people to start to see the possibilities, because it's one thing to talk about it conceptually, but I think it's generating other ideas in people's minds, because frankly, there's probably things none of us have thought about what's capable on this network. So I think that's pretty exciting. So thanks, Harlan, and thanks for the work of the PSAC. Please send our appreciation to them for all their hard work. I think they've learned a lot through this process as well and have become great spokespeople for their particular communities and their functions. And I think that's been a really important, it's been a real reciprocal situation. So thanks very much. Neil, I think we have some other guests for you to introduce, so why don't you go ahead and do that for us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to just comment a little bit on what Donald was saying about, you know, the interoperability. And I look back at Illinois. I did a little history, having lived here for a long time, and I remember the amount of disasters that we've had in this state. You know, we've actually had earthquakes in the southern part of the state. We've had floods, and I know Donald was involved with the big flood on the Mississippi River at one point in time. We have heat waves that killed over 600 people. We have snowstorms where it kills 60 people. And tornadoes constantly seem to work their way a little north from Nebraska and get into our state also. But the amount of, and we look at obviously the city. I know after 9/11, there used to be kind of a joke here that you might as well put a bullseye on the Sears Tower, because that was kind of the next place where everyone, and having offices here, I know that I went over there several times because space got very cheap in the Sears Tower because everybody wanted to leave it. But and we really did look at it. It was just the drills running up and down the stairs all the time. My employees didn't want to move. But anyway, you face a lot of complexities in this state and in this city. And so it's my pleasure now to introduce Alicia Tate Nadeau, who's Executive Director of the City of Chicago Office of Emergency Management and Communications. And she's been in this role for more than, been in public safety for more than 3 decades. But in 2015, she made history as becoming the first female in Illinois to be promoted to the position of general. So General, congratulations. And most recently, General Nadeau was involved in on FEMA's regional team as the lead in the Flint water crisis that went on in Flint, Michigan. But prior to that, she was, when she was with the Illinois National Guard, she was actually stationed in Israel, where from 2011 to 2014, where she actually coordinated and ran joint operations between Israel, the U.S., and Germany, and those were in the search and rescue in urban areas. So that's a very important work. She also served in Iraq, thank you for your service, and was actually awarded the Bronze Star, one of the most highest decorated honors you can have. So, General, congratulations, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Madam Chairwoman, Board, thank you for allowing us to be here and for having your meeting here in Chicago. We think that you're going to hear a common theme throughout this, which is the fact that the public safety is a unit that we all have to work together to do. I think the other thing that you'll find is unique in Illinois is that we work very closely with the state. We are not an isolated entity here in Chicago. Whenever we talk about interoperability and where we can go with FirstNet, we have a shared vision that is promulgated all the way from the state through the local and the public sector level. Today, as I go through and do my briefing, I've asked one of our strategic partners to be part of this briefing to you today. Deputy Chief Jonathan Lewins, to my right from the Chicago Police Department, will also be talking about some of the challenges that we have. We want to share with you the depth and breadth of what we do here in Chicago, and then talk about it from what that looks like from an end user perspective. And then I've also asked our Deputy Director for Public Safety and Information Technology, Mr. Dan Casey, to talk to you about some of the tests and things that we have also done to position ourselves, not just for today, but to look towards the future in public safety and information. For those of you that are viewing this webinar, I just wanted to give you a little understanding about the complexity of the city of Chicago.
We're about 2.7 million people. We're the third largest city in the nation, but we have the second largest police and fire departments in the nation. We are broken down into 5 areas. One of the key things is whenever we talk about the Office of Emergency Management and Communication, probably the one thing that we can say is that nationally, we are the only ones that have that big C on the end, which is the communications piece. This is what really makes us unique across the country, and that not only do we tie in emergency management and public safety, but we also have the responsibility to develop the interoperability across the public safety spectrum. And you'll see that as our last bullet, but I'd like to share with you just a little bit of facts and figures related to our area. We also have 911. We have about 5 million calls per year in our 911. And in our 311 center, we have about 4 million calls that we do annually. For our Office of Emergency Management, on any given weekend, we have about 80 different events that will occur. And those events go anywhere from up to 2 million people down to the smallest, about the smallest we have is about 5,000 throughout. And then we also have the Traffic Management Authority, and very soon we'll also be taking over the school crossing guards. And again, our philosophy is we look at this as a totality of public safety, and how do we all work together to ensure that we have the safety of our citizens. And then, of course, we also have the public safety information technology piece related to us. We also incorporate 5 different coordination centers, which many of you had an opportunity to see yesterday. 2 of those run 24/7, 365 days a year. That's our Operations Center, which is, if you'll look at the photo to the right of that, this is where we have our federated camera program. The city of Chicago has the very largest federated camera program in the entire nation with over 29,000 cameras. Whenever we say federated, what that means is that we have the ability to push that video both from our operations center down to our command posts in the field. So whenever we have these large events, the police also have an opportunity to see what's going on. We believe that this is really our value-added piece, to be able to actually have eyes on all of these different locations. And this also assists us, should something occur, it gives us very good situational awareness. In addition to that, we've also incorporated the Chicago Public School Security Center into the OEMC location, understanding that the safety of our children is paramount to us. These are just some of the pieces of equipment that we deploy on a regular basis for you. And I really just want to point out a couple of these. The first, of course, is the federated camera system, which I already spoke about. And then the fact that we have over 25,000 land mobile radios associated and 4,000 GPS devices. And we are also moving into the spectrum to work with safety, public safety smartphones as we integrate. Large-scale operations, these are just some examples of the large-scale items that we do. We have about 3, depending on how good the Blackhawks, the Bulls, and our other sports events are, we average between 2 and 3 different large-scale events that have over 2 million people present, and that is also to include the City of Chicago's marathon. And then we run about 4 to 5 large-scale events a year that are about 1.5 to 1 million people. And then the rest of those, as you can see, are those that are about 5,000 or more. What I'd like to do is turn this over now to Deputy Chief Jonathan Lewin, who will talk to you as one of our strategic partners about how we work and integrate with the City of Chicago's Police Department.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. I'm going to be brief. Just talk about some of the technology systems that we have that depend on communications. So when I give this talk, I always talk about FirstNet and how important this is for first responders and to enable everything that we're trying to do here in Chicago. These are just some of the technology platforms that we have in our police vehicles. There are things like the computer dispatch system, mobile client installed in over 2,000 vehicles, the ability to send real-time images out to our squad cars, some of which are captured from the vast surveillance camera system that the General just spoke of. In the future, we would like to be able to deliver real-time video from some of those surveillance cameras out to the vehicles. That's where that in-car camera system also could send video back. Right now, we have to drive the car to a Wi-Fi hotspot located at any of Chicago's 22 police districts to get the images back into the back end. Automated license plate recognition, both fixed and mobile. They're both in cars and on fixed cameras. Mobile gunshot detection. We have gunshot detection in several areas of the city. Again, all these things depend on communications. This is a map called Windy Grid that we developed in conjunction with the city's Department of Innovation and Technology. Essentially, everything that has a spatial component can be visualized on this map in as real time as the source data is. So again, whether it's real-time bus tracking, GPS tracking on police and fire and other city assets, police, fire, 911 calls for service, 311 calls for service. This really speaks to the interoperability across many of our systems, and this is accessible by users in multiple city departments and even other agencies as we have multi-agency response. Our CLEAR system is our citizen and law enforcement analysis and reporting platform. This is one of the largest transaction police databases in the United States. It serves over 33,000 users at over 450 local, state, and federal agencies. We process all the arrests for every police department in Cook County, which is over 120 departments. We're in partnership with Cook County Sheriff to expand this to become a regional case management system. We had an early partnership with the Illinois State Police to develop a shared statewide interoperable data warehouse. Our superintendent has announced that we will be moving towards incident-based reporting in the near future through a grant that we're very excited about. These are some of the source data components of the CLEAR system. So just about everything that can be automated is automated. Everything from incident reports to, again, arrest reports, interaction with the CAD system, calls for service, citizen interactions, evidence, property, warrants, gang information, citizen crime tips, critical facilities through FIMS, which is our Facilities Information Management System that tracks thousands of critical facilities around the region. Again, information accessible by first responders from police and fire and also at the OEMC. So this is just a vast database serving tens of thousands of users. A lot of information there. I'm just going to go through a summary of some of our major grant-funded initiatives. Many of these are partnerships with OEMC, and I think Mr. Cox said it best. What we're trying to do is prove that things that may not be thought of as possible can in fact be done. So we view these as in many ways as national best practices. A lot of our funding comes from UASC, Urban Area Security Initiative, DHS funding, funds a lot of the cameras, the mapping platforms, radios, vehicle technology. I think Dan Casey is going to talk in more depth about a broadband pilot using the 700 meg space that we cooperated with OEMC on to deliver this technology out to first responders in a very busy police district on the south side of Chicago. There's a Bureau of Justice Statistics grant, again, to move us towards NIBRs. Body-worn cameras, we'll have over 2,100 body-worn cameras deployed by the end of July. It'd be wonderful to be able to use a space like FirstNet to get some of that video, not all of it all the time, but in specific use cases, get some of that video back to the back end. Smart policing, we have a predictive policing grant in partnership with Illinois Institute of Technology to try to identify specific criminal subjects that are most likely to be future parties to violence, either victims or offenders in gun violence, essentially. And then the last grant that we're excited about is optimizing the use of video technology from National Institute of Justice, also a partnership with the OEMC to extend the efficacy of this video surveillance platform by testing and building in advanced video analytics. So all these things are very important and they all depend on communications, and very much looking forward to FirstNet being here. Thank you.
It's on. Thank you for your time today. My name is Dan Casey. I'm in charge of radios and mobile devices. We had a grant, and we appreciate FirstNet giving us the STA through the FCC to do this pilot program, an LTE system in the 7th District on the south side of Chicago. Our partners on this, Motorola, Purdue University did the testing through their video image and processing laboratory, Professor Edward Delp and his graduate assistant, Khalid Taboub. Did most of the testing with some of our police officers and some of our techs from the OEMC. They had static locations and dynamic locations. And again, this was funded by DHS Science and Technology. Here's the coverage map for that single site location. It's on the south side of the city. Fairly good coverage, set it up as sector antennas. The system performed well. It did have, at the edges of the cellular edge, it did have degradation as they simulated traffic on the system and they pushed video over it. There was some quality issues at the edge, but that was because we were a single site. So we look forward to moving this up to a larger site. Their detailed report is available online through the DHS site, and the bottom line of that report is that this was an unprecedented resource for public safety users. The ability to push that amount of broadband to a user in a vehicle, in the field, on a handheld device was unprecedented. And we would like to take it citywide. We feel that having this ability to go beyond just one district, to go across the city with an LTE platform that would allow us to push that kind of data, that kind of video imaging to all of our public safety users, which includes, our public works users who oftentimes are, on the front lines of getting streets open and cleared so the police and firefighters can get to where they need to go. Oops, go back one. Sorry, this thing's sticking on me. Chicago experience, we do have challenges. We have, high-density crowd situations, as our executive director mentioned. There's the urban canyon, and there are buildings made of brick and steel. It's a very difficult RF environment. We face it every day. And then maintenance, just keeping a system like this alive and upgraded. We have multiple devices. Our executive director pointed out, just the maintenance and support on that alone is a difficult challenge. But what we can do and what we can offer for you is experience. We have experienced our own data network beyond just the LTE system that you were gracious to give us the STA on. We do have the old RD lab system, which we're converting over from. We have experience with scale, and then we have had one other site as well. We did during NATO. There was an LTE 3-site system that we put along the lakefront. I'll hand it back to our executive director.
So thank you very much. Hopefully the theme that you heard throughout this is that we believe in a public safety network. We believe that the very challenging and important work that you're doing here at FirstNet really focuses on the resiliency of the citizens of Chicago, and more importantly, the strategic implications for resiliency for our nation. And we are very pleased to be part of this initiative, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak with you today.
Well, thank you. I think having people understand it from the people who are dealing with this every day, I think is very important. So I appreciate you taking the time out to do this. It's interesting because having been in technology for a long time, that's essentially the easy part. You were talking about the governance and the process issues. One of the things that the PSAC is working on is this kind of local control issue, and how do you integrate all these capabilities together. I think actually that's a more challenging issue for us, and we're going to all have to really work together to how do we operate with this, we're on steroids, and how do we operate with that capability. And so I think the work that the PSAC is doing and the work that you're doing to figure out the governance issues and how we actually make this the most effective so we're not tripping on each other is going to be our biggest challenge. So appreciate what you're doing, and we're obviously going to tap into the work that you're doing because I think it'll be instructive to what we do for the rest of the nation. So thanks for everything you do, and thanks for being here today. I appreciate it very much. We're going to move on and take care of some resolutions that we talked about yesterday in the committee meetings. And the first resolution has to do with with the Boulder lease. We have facilities in Boulder for our technology group. They've been there for a couple of years, but we have the opportunity to extend that lease. We talked about the details of that yesterday, so this is for board consideration. And I would like Karen to read the operative portion of the resolution for the entire board, please.
Thank you. Now therefore be it resolved that the FirstNet Board approves the new occupancy lease agreement and authorizes the FirstNet management team to enter into the new occupancy lease agreement with GSA for the FirstNet technical headquarters in Boulder, Colorado.
I would move that that resolution be passed. Is there a second? Thank you, Barry. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Motion's passed. And Karen, again, could you make that available on our website after the meeting?
Yes.
The second resolution that we need passed is a vote on the PSAC charter. We had a discussion yesterday about modifying some language on that charter. And so, Karen, I don't know if you have the amended language that you could share with the entire board, and then if you could read the operative portion, I'd be appreciated.
I do. The PSAC charter, the amended PSAC charter was amended to include the language that the federal members shall be recommended by their respective organizations, but must be appointed by the chair of the FirstNet board. That follows the language that is used for the other PSAC members. And so the operative language, now therefore be it resolved that the FirstNet board, having reviewed the recommended revisions to the PSAC charter, hereby adopts the revised and amended PSAC charter as presented to the board by FirstNet senior leadership, copies of which are attached hereto as Exhibit A.
Motion for that resolution.
Madam Chair, I move to approve.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Any further discussion on the charter? Amy or Suzanne, did that reflect the changes we discussed yesterday?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, great. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Motion approved. And again, if we could make that available, I'd appreciate it. We're going to move on to some very brief updates on the committee reports from yesterday. And so I'm going to first turn to Chief Johnson to bring us up to date on the consultation committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I want to start my remarks by saying thank you to Ed Reynolds, who I heard on the phone. Ed has been a spectacular contributor to this board and a real guiding light for many of us. So Ed, nice to have you on the call, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you very much.
Also, I want to reflect briefly, Neil, on some of your thoughts. They pair up very nicely with what former Chairman Sam Ginn told me about his career as he moved from wireline service to the wireless service. And there was obviously a period in wireless where dedicating your career to the evolution of wireless technology with the hopes of creating a consumer demand for that product was risky, and at a minimum frowned upon and looked askance at by your colleagues. I think your term was, people thought I was crazy, right? So that's not a medical comment on my part. That was more a reflection of what it's like to be a leader in any industry and truly move forward, because the fact is, the most comfortable thing for any of us to do is to be where we're at and to make our decisions by staring in the mirror. And I just don't, if you look at history, especially in technology, it's the people that can impute the future from the technology we're currently using, and look how it's going to make us better. So I thank you and Sam and all of you that have gone before us in terms of glancing over the horizon and bringing this vision to public safety. Because indeed, this is going to evolve public safety to a level we've never had before. And when we have a single nationwide technology platform for public safety that is mission critical and the public safety can rely on, the evolution and the innovation that's going to surround that sole mission critical platform, I think, is going to be staggering. And Harlan, I know you and many others have seen that for many years. I also want to kick off this morning by talking about our intent to build a customer responsive organization. And as part of that, in a moment, I'm going to introduce our new Chief Customer Officer. And I think it's easy sometimes to say, government doesn't do something as well as the private sector. And, it's easier to make those broad overviews. But the fact is, I've had some governmental services, especially in public safety, but I've had some governmental services that are spectacular in terms of how they treat and in terms of how they perform, truly a credit to service. I've also had some really not very good experiences with private companies. I made a snarky comment about the service I received from one major corporation online when they sent me a customer satisfaction survey because I wasn't pleased at all. And I'll be doggone if I didn't get a call within 2 hours from a customer service person that was concerned. And they fixed the problem on the phone. I mean, that's a true commitment to service. So we're going to have hiccups now and then, but it's how you respond to fix it. And as our chairwoman and fellow board members know, I'm currently building out a commercial building in my own community, and sometimes the approach that the contractors have with me does not make me feel very customer-centric. Because it's a construction boom. The point is not to be lost on, it isn't a public or private thing. It's a culture thing and it's an attitude thing. And it would have been really easy to call Rich Reed our bureau chief of services, but that isn't the choice we made. We picked Rich Reed to be our Chief Customer Officer because indeed Rich is going to be focused on our customer, and that culturally and organizationally we are focused on the public safety users for whom we build this network. And so Rich, welcome as our Chief Customer Officer, and we look forward to you propping up and strengthening our focus on our customers and public safety at every turn.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Is it my turn? I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning. We have the clicker. Thank you, Vice Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning. I also appreciate the confidence you've shown in selecting me. I look forward to the challenge of executing the role of Chief Customer Officer, and I promise you that I'm going to execute that in a way that is focused on delivering the best possible service to the customers and public safety entities that are going to subscribe to this network. I understand how challenging this is going to be, deploying the network across the entire nation and the experiences our customers are going to have, and bringing those back to our future partner and making sure that we're delivering the best possible service. The most focused service possible is going to be the key to our success over the long term. So thank you for that opportunity, and I look forward to the challenge. I want to just very briefly go through how we're engaging in outreach consultation, give you a quick update on what we've done over since the last board meeting. We had a state single point of contact, or SPOC, meeting recently, and we had the most successful meeting that we've had to date. I want to thank Amanda Hilliard, our outreach director, for hosting this meeting. We had very robust participation with nearly 300 attendees participating. Over 170 participants from the states, from 55 different states out of the 56 states and territories. Very large participation, including 6 federal agencies, representatives from the Public Safety Advisory Committee and the Tribal Working Group. We had presentations from both the PSCR and NTIA on the future interactions we're going to have in terms of planning and deploying the network. We talked about the state planning process. We wanted to really take the opportunity to bring everyone together. And I want to say how important it is, not just the information we provide to the states, territories, and the federal agencies, but also the interaction that they have when they come together as a collective unit. the interaction that they have outside of our delivery mechanism is very important. What we see is that the ability to deliver the content, deliver the information we have in a single place, so everyone hears it the same way, the same time, from the same delivery mechanism, incredibly important, and we see tremendous value there. We had information deliveries from my team on the state planning side, how we're going to deliver that state plans information. We provided updates on the RFP, the current status of the RFP process. We gave detailed information around the way we're going to interact with states and provide the information to the governor's staff. And we found that the information was well received and we got positive feedback from all attendees. We're going to continue to consult. We spent a lot of time executing the FY16 consultation. We're continuing to execute the interactions we have with the single points of contact. But we're actually focusing consultation beyond those single points of contact and really addressing how we're going to deliver the information to the governance bodies. We heard today from Illinois how important it was to engage in the governance discussions around how decisions are made at the state level. We're really engaged in trying to make sure that the information that we provide and the understanding completely how decisions are made at the state level, so that when we provide the draft state plans, we understand who the decision makers are, how they're going to make decisions at the state level. And we're going to focus on executing the state plan process. In terms of executing consultation, we've also decided that it was very important to execute the communications task team. And I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous and I'm struggling right now. The consultation task teams are really focused on delivering the best possible service. The consultation task teams are really focused on delivering the information we have around quality, priority preemption, and really making sure folks understand the value proposition that we're developing for public safety. We're also looking at executing the dialogue around executive consultation. So how to prepare the governor's staff for receiving the information, the value proposition that FirstNet's going to provide, and making sure that we understand how the decisions are made at the state level. In terms of state planning, the information that we're developing, this is a graphic that shares post-award how we're going to execute our state planning process. So in terms of post-award scenarios, FirstNet is going to execute a IDIQ, a best value award, and we're going to deliver a solution to public safety that is based on a nationwide IDIQ. We're going to execute a 3-task order scenario where in the very beginning we're going to execute 3 task orders associated with the execution of the network. The first task order, the first 3 task orders are going to be based on delivery of state plans, the delivery of the portal to develop the state plan delivery process, and ultimately preparing for the core network. Yeah, thank you, Jeff. After we execute that best value award, we're going to then develop the state plan content and the delivery mechanism. We intend to deliver that information through an online portal that's going to control the information in a scenario where there's going to be a username and password, and there's going to be an open session where we provide information to public safety users and ultimately the practitioners who are going to adopt the network. The open section is going to be what you would experience in any mobile data scenario where a cellular provider is going to share the information on devices, coverage, capacity, the cost of service. And then the secured section is going to be information that we would expect to protect and to really make sure that we don't create additional vulnerabilities in the network. It's really going to be important that when we deliver this information to the governors for a decision, that they have the ability to have all of the information in which to make a good decision. So we want to make sure that all of the information that the governor needs to make a good informed decision is provided in that state plan. After we work with our partner post-award to develop the content, we're going to fulfill a promise that Chief Johnson made many years ago, in which to allow states to review that draft plan information. We intend to go out and share this information with decision makers in the state. We want to go out and provide the decision makers within the state the ability to review that value proposition, that proposal we're going to provide, and allow them to give us feedback. We hope that after we go through that review process that we receive feedback that this is a high value proposition for the state and that they want us to execute the RAN deployment within the state. And we will finalize that document and we will make that available to the governor. At that point, we enter into a phase that's very important. The governor has a statutory ability to make a decision at that point that says that either we're going to accept the FirstNet proposal as provided, or we're going to take on the responsibility for executing the network deployment ourselves, and that's a very important decision point. We believe that once the governor makes the decision to either accept the FirstNet proposal or to take on that responsibility, it allows not only FirstNet, but our partner to have a firm understanding about how network deployment is going to happen nationwide, and it brings certainty to that partner, which is very important. So absent any further questions, that's my update for today, but I want to thank everyone for the opportunity, and I appreciate the responsibility that you put on me.
Rich, thank you so much. Just a few more comments, I think, about kind of where we're headed in consultation. This is an evolving organization, as you see, with the appointment of Rich in this important office. And it's just important, though, that we stay focused on being flat and nimble and quick. And that as we evolve from the organization that built a network vision out of 16 key objectives, in which we would find a partner to build this network, that we, no matter where we are on this timeline, that we never lose focus on being nimble and efficient and focused on public safety. After all, that's where it is, but we can't do that without state partners. And we have poured an enormous amount of resource, energy, and emotion into building relationships at the state level. And like any relationship, maybe I guess we could treat them like a lot of people do and just think of it for the moment, but that's not where we are at. Even after this network is deployed and the states have made their decision, a fully informed decision, as we've always promised, I think we have to see this as a long, decades-long relationship because this network is always going to need improvement. It's going to need further coverage. It's going to need enhancements. And, you know, we're not in the best position to hear that from wherever we are. We're in the best position to hear that from the states. So once we deploy this network, it's still going to be incumbent upon us to have our ears open and to be reactive and responsive to the needs of the state. Our commitment to the rural parts of this country, it's cultural. It's imputed. I think there's too many of us, if I think back to the legislative days, Madam Chair, I think there's too many of us that came out on the short end of the big places got what they wanted, then the program ran out of money, and the rural part of this country never got what was promised. And we took a very different approach. This approach actually has legislative benchmarks associated with rural coverage that I think the architects of this language saw, that some of this nation's most horrific and magnanimous emergency events happen in rural America and move to cities, or happen in cities and move to rural America. And there's a recognition that the police officer working in southern rural Idaho, whose backup is an hour and a half away, may actually have a greater need than someone that maybe worked in my service territory whose backup was 4 blocks away. There is scale and magnitude differences and impact differences, but also this is a time and distance business. FirstNet, it's not lost on us, and our focus on rural America and our focus on providing coverage to those responders in rural America is a value we hold that we will not abandon. We're also looking for multiple approaches. We're looking for different ways to do this. The fact is, at the end of the day, this public safety network has not been done before. If I know one thing, Madam Chair, as I wrap up my comments, I know that we don't know everything. And I know we're going to learn some things that we didn't anticipate, and I know we're going to have to change a strategy. I'm glad I find myself amongst a board of directors and amongst a staff that gets that. And you can be assured we'll pick a partner that understands that and understands our commitment that this is public safety. This isn't about FirstNet, it is about them. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No, Jeff, I appreciate that. And, you know, just a comment to Rich. The responsibility that Rich and his organization has right now is immense. The work that they have ahead of them should not be underestimated in terms of what it's going to take to put together these state plans. Like Jeff said, this has never been done before, and to do that concurrently is a huge undertaking. And I just want Rich and the rest of the staff to know that you have our full support in getting that done, and make sure that you come to us if there's any issues that you feel are getting in the way of that, because this is a massive undertaking and a big responsibility. I'd also like to respond to your comment, Chief, about, you know, we haven't done this before, and, you know, to Neil's comment, in the early days of cellular, we didn't know how it was either. It may look like that now, like we've had it all figured out, but we didn't, and we had to figure it out along the way, and this is no different. And I guess that's why I feel confident about this, is having been through it before, knowing that, I mean, you know conceptually what you want to do, the vision is clear, people are committed, it can be done. So I think we're on a good track here, and I appreciate your comments. We're going to move on to...
Madam Chair, may I ask a quick question? And either Jeff or Rich, maybe you could elaborate a little bit, because I was struck by what you said, Jeff. Obviously, we are committed to, this is a nationwide network, and the rural areas are important. It is a decision that's going to be made in the governor's office, but we had a great presentation here from Chicago, and I'm acutely aware that big cities can Bigfoot other areas, but for a system that is going to need to be effective for both the big cities and the rural areas, we can't just focus on the governor's office, even though that's where the decision is going to reside. And so if we could add just a little bit about what we're doing to make sure that the Chicagos and the Houstons and the New York Cities are included, but also that the rural areas, even in states where there may not be an existing mechanism, to make sure that all those voices are heard.
Thank you. It's a great point. So the consultation team is actually right now focused on large metropolitan areas. One of the major focuses we have is in terms of doing outreach consultation with large metropolitan areas. So we agree that obviously rural is very important. It's one of the actual focuses of the legislation, but we can't do that and ignore the large metropolitan areas. So we have folks right now executing consultation with large metropolitan areas and making sure that we go out and engage with those key decision makers at the large urban areas to make sure that they have the information they need in which to not only adopt the service eventually, but also to participate in the conversation at the state level.
And are those direct interactions with those cities, or are they through the governor's office, or both?
So both. Obviously, we're still engaging that state single point of contact to make sure that they're informed of our activities, but it's also directly with the chiefs in those major metropolitan areas to ensure that they have the information they need to make a good decision.
Thank you.
TJ, you may want to offer up on just last weekend, what we're trying to do to make sure the stakeholders at the metro levels are aware.
Sure, and last weekend was the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and the mayor well knows, and she's spoken about FirstNet there before, and it was great to see former board member Wellington Webb was also there, and the great interaction that we've been having with mayors. And one of the great things about that event is obviously almost every major city mayor around the country is also there, and there's some great representation, and not everybody can make it because of real things going on in their communities, but it did allow FirstNet a great opportunity to interact with a number of key mayors, a number of large metropolitan areas, as well as, medium and smaller sized areas, and it gave us another foray to make sure that we're offering up those same kind of consultative meetings and discussions. This metro strategy, which was part of our 2016 consultation strategy specifically, was trying to hit 50, 60 major metropolitan areas in addition to all the state outreach and other key public safety outreach that we've been doing. And those opportunities, like Rich said, we're still continuing to work with the single point of contact, but we're also going in directly to have those conversations, inviting the state single point of contact, but making sure that major city police chiefs, fire chiefs, EMS chiefs, key leaders in these metropolitan areas across jurisdictions are all getting together because they're very important to the overall solution. There are a large number of the public safety users across this country, and they need to have a key influence on the outcomes and the success of the network.
But I'd like to point out, TJ, that it's not just us reaching out to them. I think what's happened is once you've reached out and shared with the police chief or fire chief or head of public safety in an area, the importance of getting a cohesive strategy, not just for that metropolitan area, but to introduce the surrounding organizations or surrounding communities of chiefs and fire department personnel and major first responders, that they have stepped up to say, look, we'll host, we'll provide a facility for you to come in. You can have a presentation to the urban group first or simultaneously with the suburban and more rural community. Or it may make sense to have two separate sessions, one addressing the needs of the rural and suburban community versus the perhaps specialized needs of the urban. And Los Angeles was one of the particular areas that came up with. So I think that, it's really a campaign. It's an information campaign, but also it's setting up the right meetings, forum, for the conversations to take place. And so I think that the things that Rich has described really is the outreach through the governor's office, obviously with the organizations that have been put into place, plus the direct connection to both urban areas and using their offices to help outreach to suburban and rural communities is really, the target. Thank you.
I agree, and one of the things we've been doing this year is it's really getting to the point where the actual, key leaders in public safety at the city level, the county level, and so forth, are continuing to bring in more operational folks. I think we heard a little bit earlier about moving from the tactical to the strategic, and in our case, operational. And I think having that kinds of hand-on interaction is terrific, and I think Chief McEwen has a few other comments on this.
Very little, but I just wanted to mention that we had a fairly lengthy discussion here yesterday about the strategy, and they're engaging me, TJ and Rich, Dave Buchanan, Amanda, we're all engaged in how to best, actually do this, and who are the best people. I mean, Mary, you would understand, like others may not, that in some cases the mayor is the right person to lead this effort. Some places it may be the police chief. Some places it depends on who the leadership in that city and urban area is, and that's what we're talking about. And the PSAC's engaged in that.
Obviously, a very important part of what we're focused on, as I said in my opening remarks, this is one of the key areas we have this year, and we need to make sure that we get out to the right people versus kind of a broad brush. It's a much more targeted, laser-focused approach, I think, as we enter into the final laps here before the award. Governor Douglas, I think you're up with the Finance Committee, sir.
Madam Chairman, the first topic I'll mention is one with which the board is very familiar. The Finance Committee over the last month or so has reviewed the extension of the Boulder lab lease. The board approved it earlier today, and we're delighted to have a pretty good deal going forward, given the competition with another industry for lease space in the Denver Boulder metro area. So we think that'll be something that'll serve us well. There are a number of updates and changes in our CFO's office, and I'll invite Kim to offer some remarks in just a few minutes, but in case she's too modest, she and her team have been working with the Program Management Office to develop the first ever 5-year plan for FirstNet that's in place now and will help us with our strategic decisions and map out our future in a more thoughtful and comprehensive way. Kim's been working on changing our financial reporting processes to conform to FASB, and we've got the first quarterly financial reports that the committee and board can review. That's going to be very helpful for us because, as has been indicated already, we're in a time now where we're evolving from a startup to an organization that's more substantial in terms of our budgeting and staffing, and moving toward the awarding of a contract, the state plan development and presentation, and of course ultimately deployment. So it's important to have the financial tools in place as we move into those new phases. Our plan is to have a draft budget from our CFO office in the next month or so to convene the Finance Committee in August, make a recommendation to the board, and at the end of the month we'll present that for your consideration. One other change that I think is quite positive as we move toward the status of independence, to which the Vice Chairman referred a little earlier. We're strengthening internal controls, and as part of that process had a peer review by NTIA, and they were so impressed with the controls that Kim and her folks have in place that they have allowed us full control of our accounts payable now, so that we don't have to have those reviewed by NTIA. So it takes out a step, one step at least. We're moving forward toward a greater flexibility and a nimble financial operation, and so we appreciate that step forward, and we hope that we'll be able to find some others that will allow us even greater nimbility? No, I guess that's not a noun. We'll be even more nimble as time goes forward. So I want to thank Kim for her great work and leadership, and turn it over to her.
Thank you, Governor Douglas. Good morning, everyone. I want to begin this morning by giving you an update on our current year budget execution, fiscal year 2016. As you can see, we are doing very well compared to when you compare our actuals to our budgets. Our actual obligations as of May 31st are 93% compared to forecast. Our expenses, actual expenses as of May 31st, are 90% of our budgeted expenses. So we are tracking very well throughout the year. One thing I'll just point out at the bottom of the slide that you see, we actually show a percent obligated of 46% and a percent expensed of 49.6%. While these are accurate if you straight line the budget across the entire fiscal year, I'd like to point out that in June you see a spike in our obligations that we are anticipating. When you normalize the budget for that spike, we actually are at 67% obligated for the year, and we are at 67% of the fiscal year. So we are tracking perfectly where we want to be, and this is as of May 31st. Moving forward to looking at fiscal year 17 and our budget formulation process that we've already begun, we actually are developing more formal guidance to help streamline the budget process. We have a lot of steps involved in the process, but I think one that I'd like to bring to the board's attention is August 26th, as Governor Douglas mentioned. This is the date where we plan to present the budget to the board for approval. Governor Douglas also mentioned that we have been working quite diligently on our 5-year strategic plan that's covering fiscal years 2016 through 2020. As you know, we have our 4 strategic goals focusing on partnerships, stakeholder engagement, innovation, and people and organization. We actually have developed 17 objectives to support these 4 strategic goals. And we have actually also developed key performance indicators and metrics to support these goals so we can measure how we're doing against our goals and objectives. This is wonderful because it provides us strategic direction after award of our contract. And one thing that's important to note as we look at the strategic plan is the link of the plan to performance. By linking the plan to actual performance, we can actually look to make sure that we are strategizing towards the goals as we laid out in our plan. This allows us to also focus on resource allocation to make sure that we have the right resources in place to achieve those goals. And it also allows us to look at duplication, make sure there is no duplication across business unit efforts, and help us synergize toward those common strategic goals and objectives. And ultimately, this provides us with that transparency that we want for our FirstNet stakeholders, and also ensures accountability within FirstNet and to the stakeholders of FirstNet. So that concludes the Finance Committee update.
You know, Kim, and maybe this is a comment for TJ and Mike too, obviously as we evolve towards an award and the organizational structure, a lot will depend on who our partner is and how, what our organization needs to look like. So I would just suggest that, and I haven't talked to the board about this, but it seems to me that once the award is done, and if there are some adjustments that need to be done, we can certainly come back and revisit the budget during the year and make any appropriate adjustments as appropriate. So I want to make sure the staff, because you're kind of in an odd situation here, you're trying to plan for the unknown. And so I would like you to plan lean, and then knowing once the award is done, I think we can make some adjustments after that, because I don't want to put a lot of resources in and then not need them and do a lot of work that way. So that would be my suggestion on how we approach the budgeting this year.
And Madam Chairwoman, that is actually how we are approaching this budget. We are putting a lot of thought into this year's budget for those reasons.
It's been a great exercise because, there's a lot of absolutes and basic tenets, and then there's a lot of crystal balling going on. So we're trying to account, and so the final budget that you'll see in the end of August will account for some of that, and it will be clearly delineated as to where we may anticipate some variances either in the approach or staffing pending award.
Good. We're all on the same page. That's great. Glad to hear that. Well, we've had a couple years of practice, right, TJ?
We have, and I think it's been a much easier process this year due to our past history and really being, very clear in what we're doing going forward and the outcomes that we're looking for. And like you said, we've planned to come back to the board post-award for those changes, and we're only putting in those things that we know we need to do now.
Super. Okay, great. Barry, I think you're up on the Technology Committee.
This section was marked condensed committee updates, which is, I guess, why I was given a non-working microphone. But at any rate, I want to spend a little time talking about the technology team. I think Jeff and his team have been incredibly busy, not only analyzing responses to the RFP, but also looking at various other requirements of both the law as well as opportunities within the technology environment. Yesterday, he gave us a pretty fulsome update on those things. I think one of which was establishing the network policies for FirstNet, which is a requirement of our enabling legislation, and he'll probably give you some more details in his brief update on that. I guess I'd like to thank the board for approving the bold release that will give Jeff a place to put the lab that he has been planning and expects to have done here before the end of the year. And then importantly, I'd like him to spend a little bit of time talking about this $300 million R&D prize program that he's working with PSCR in conjunction with, because I think it's an interesting opportunity and an exciting opportunity to bring some real innovation to what's happening on the technology side for first responders here at FirstNet. So with that, I will turn it over to Jeff.
Great. Absolutely. Thank you, Barry and Madam Chairwoman, for allowing me to give a quick update. I did go into much more detail yesterday, and those slides are available, but I've got a couple here that I'll key on. Again, we are very busy, but we're also in this transition mode, as Mike and TJ and others have alluded to, post-award, what we'll be doing operational-wise. And a lot of that hinges on these network policies that are not only mandated in the Act, but are going to be critical for those governors and states that choose to opt out and deploy their own RAN equipment. These policies will also be part of that package so that they fully understand what they're committing to and what they're signing up for to interconnect to the nationwide public safety broadband network. So this has been a cross-functional group across technical, the chief customer office, legal team, some of the project management and support functions as well. So a lot of work, and we started this approximately 6 months ago. We're a long ways down the road of having a good set of what we feel are some of the initial network policies that, again, once we have a partner, we can put the final details on those, get those ready in conjunction with the state plan development effort, and be able to present those with the state plans. But these are also living documents, as I think Neil Cox and yourself that have been in the wireless industry. These change and are updated, quarterly, if not monthly, as things progress and technology matures. So these will be living documents that as it moves forward. So that's really the focus on network policies. I'll take any questions. Otherwise, we'll move to, as Barry kindly alluded to, I appreciate the lease approval, because now all the work we've been doing for the last 12 months with Mike on my team, he's ready to execute with GSA the work order to get the lab actually constructed and built. We've gone through all the city approvals, everything we needed from a local perspective in Boulder, so we're ready to hit the go button now, and some of my staff are watching this intently and going to go straight to GSA after the meeting today, say let's go. So appreciate that, and I want to give a little flavor on the lab that FirstNet and we're putting in Boulder. It will be focused on this trust but verify model. We will be validating the future partner solutions and what they plan to deliver for our customers, the public safety users on this network. Going back to the great discussion by Chief Johnson and Rich Reed this earlier about the focus on the customer and what they can expect and not expect from the network. So that's really the goal of this lab, verifying those key features that we know aren't in the commercial type environments today, quality of service, priority preemption being the first ones out the gate. We'll also be working on device approval, working with NIST as part of the legislation to develop these list of certified devices. We'll be adding to what's already done in the commercial space, but again, focused on that public safety aspect. And then some of the future application development. The way the public safety community is going to experience this network is via applications in most cases. So we want to enable a strong development community that can bring applications to the representatives from the state and the OEMC alluded to today. There's a wealth of data across many different disciplines and agencies, and having a network dedicated to public safety is going to open up a whole new stream of application development and situational awareness, location, et cetera. So we're going to put in place the capabilities for that with open APIs and other things, and this lab will help with that as well. And then finally, to touch on, we took that slide out of here, but I'll touch on the R&D funding that PSCR received out of the same legislation. $300 million out of the AWS-3 auction that was held last year. is now in their checkbook, as I like to say, and Derek holds the pen for that checkbook and is getting hit up by lots of industry, but they've done a very good job of setting this up as almost a crowdsourced environment from public safety. What are some of the key things looking forward for a broadband network that they know they're going to need on this network, and how they can now go back with the prize and challenge concept to industry to help accelerate the development of some of these key public safety technologies in the future. Some of those being mission critical voice, location-based services, data analytics. It was amazing to see the OEMC yesterday, and in my mind as I'm looking at the panels of, I think they had 40 cameras going at one time, and all the back end and the petabytes of data per day that they're creating. There's a huge wealth of data that's going to need intelligent analysis for that. So one of the key efforts with that research and development funding is on that data analytics focus. How do you make sense of this so that the first responder on the street gets what he needs when he arrives and can do their job? So great opportunities there. We're working closely with them as they move that forward. There's also a dedicated working group within the PSAC that'll be assisting on the R&D efforts. We'll be advertising a lot of this on their behalf as well. Not to give Derek too hard a time, he hates the social media platforms, but we enjoy them, and so we're going to leverage ours to help advertise a lot of the efforts they'll be doing through these challenges over the next year. So with that, I'd happy to take any questions.
So I just wanted to mention that, as Jeff knows, we have weekly meetings. Under the law, they are required to consult with the PSAC, FirstNet, the FCC, and to coordinate all that. And we have monthly calls, Jeff and I and others participate in that. So I think it's well coordinated. So it's not like they're doing something and we're just so we're involved. So.
And on that note, they're actually going to leverage public safety to award the prizes, make sure it meets what public safety is looking for. So.
Right. I think it was important, we mentioned yesterday that the person running that program for Derek actually has done this before, so it's not something new, and it's been quite successful. So I think he's pretty lucky to have been able to attract a person who can hit the ground running and get the innovation that I think he's looking for. And I'm sure you'll convert him to social media, so I have no doubt that he'll come around. I'm sure he's listening right now. Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate the update. A lot of good work going on in the Technology Committee. Barry, thanks for your leadership with that. Really appreciate it. I think, our next comments will come from Mike, and we didn't really have a per se governance meeting except to really talk about the organization. We're spending a lot of time thinking about what the organization needs to look like, how it needs to operate going forward, and so I think Mike wants to not only talk about that a little bit, but then also give a quick update report in terms of the CEO report, if you want to combine those two together.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. We spent some time yesterday, and we've certainly within FirstNet have been spending the last 6 to 8 months talking about how are we going to support the public-private partnership effectively, and what organizational changes and basic tenets that we need to operate under. You've heard yesterday and certainly today, one of the major focuses is with the Chief Customer Officer, and we're delighted that Rich Reed has accepted the challenge, and we look forward to, under his leadership, a very successful program. The other area that we also focused on is with a network program office, because I view the FirstNet and the structure we've had to date is kind of a corporate structure. We've been in existence to make sure that we have the basic infrastructure in place to provide for the care and feeding of the partnership, but we do have to have a dedicated, specific area of focus to work on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, state-by-state process with our partners, the partners being the states, public safety, and with the industry. So we are standing up a network program office. We have made a decision. Steve Fletcher, who's been detailed over to us and is truly one of the unsung heroes of the organization since I got here, Steve and one of his peers, Frank Freeman, have spent most of their last 11 months since I've been here explaining to me why we can't do certain things. And once they explained why we can't do it, they always came back with, well, but this is what we can do. And so it's been an immense pleasure to work with them. So I've asked Steve to take on the leadership role of that. What happens next and what the board can expect, and you'll see it coming out through the finalization of the budget is with TJ's leadership. Steve and Kim will be coming together. I'll let them have the 4th of July off, but on the 5th to kind of finalize what that structure should look like. But as everyone's pointed out, I don't want to say it's interim because there are some basic things that are absolutes because while it is a partnership, as we talked about yesterday, we do hold a responsibility to public safety and to this board and to the government to be good stewards of the money, good stewards of this project. So we will be having accountability and responsibility gates within the structure so that we can make sure not only is the partner successful, but is executing to what they have contractually agreed to and promised. As everyone's pointed out, and I think it's an important thing to remember, this is a very complex project in a lot of different ways. Probably some days the technology will be going famously and then the governance will start falling apart and then flip back and forth. So it's going to require the organization, not just the network program office, not just the chief customer officer or the technology group. We're going to have to make sure our structure's in place and the people. So we're excited about that. The thing that we're going to be working on is that governance in the approach. We have the luxury of 250 of the best and brightest people that we're going to be drawing from that are not only passionate about this, but at this point in time, they really understand what the mission is. So there won't be that ramp up time in a normal project. Our partner may have bigger challenges than we will, making sure that they have all the right people that have an appreciation for what we're trying to accomplish. So we're going to be focused on that quite a bit. And the keys will be that, we do have the structures in place to be successful and move forward. So are there any questions on the organizational things particularly?
I don't have any questions. I think I think the challenge is to think culturally. We keep talking about culture, and I think that's one of the, org structure is one thing and culture is another. And as you know, we started, even before your arrival, Mike, started talking to TJ about that. We put the values in place, and I just can't emphasize enough, when you look at successful organizations, at the end of the day, when things get tough, it's culture that keeps it together. So I think it's really important that we spend, as much time as we can talking about that and what's required, because as we said, it's going to be bumpy. I mean, everything we do in life is bumpy. So we got to be able to have kind of that glue that keeps the organization together during those really bumpy times, and that includes the board as well.
Right. And, let me make sure this is on. So Steve Fletcher is going to be our network program officer. Can we get a round of applause for Steve? TJ, do you have anything to add before I bring this our final lap?
No, but I'll just comment on the culture piece. And as Sue knows, this is very hard. But the good news is we started early, and it's something we continue to work on each and every day, and we take very seriously. And I think to be able to serve public safety with that 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week, public safety mission-critical need that they have, we have to instill that spirit, that understanding, that desire to be responsive and accountable and open in everybody on our team. And I think we are doing that, and it's something we'll continue to work on every day.
Great. And just to close and conclude, I wanted to just mention, and we see it every day, but it really highlights when we all come together with the board. I think Congress and others were, somewhat visionary, and I know sometimes people don't always put Congress and visionary in the same sentence. By enabling this statute in the essence of having a board, an independent board, and the makeup and the mix of that board has really added a great deal of value from, our federal board members bringing an OMB, DOJ, and DHS perspective. The wireless, Neil, I think he was partnered with Alexander Graham Bell, it sounded like at some point. So we have wireless expertise, we have state and, city expertise, we have public safety. And there's an awesome dynamic tension that has really enabled us as an organization to really conquer a lot of things. So as we page forward and we think about what's on tap, we do have, an evaluation's underway. And one of the things, because we've gotten so good at doing what we say we're going to do, when we're going to do it, and how we're going to do it, everyone kind of starts thinking, well, maybe this is pretty easy, but there is a lot of hooting and hollering proverbially behind the curtains to make sure everything is moving forward. There's times where we have to, be quicker and more nimbly. Is that the word, Governor? More nimbly than everyone else. But we're at a great point, and there's great momentum. Our partnerships with NTIA and the Department of Commerce and Department of Interior are at the best probably ever, and everyone is truly leaning forward for us to be successful. But having said all that, the evaluation's underway. There's still a lot of work to do, even with that process. Lots of things could go right. Lots of things can get twisted. We're never going to allow it to go wrong, though. We're not going to stop. But we're now targeting the November award, but we will not award in November if it is not in the best interest of public safety, in the best interest of our partners, and the best interest for FirstNet and the government. Although we think we have a good, clean line of sight to be able to do that, we are not going to just rush to judgment. And capitalizing on the strengths of the boards with your backgrounds and your expertise is going to, I think, give me even more confidence that we will be able to get to where we need to be. A great deal has been accomplished, but there's still a great amount to do. So what we're going to be focusing on, certainly over the next 3 months, prior to the next board meeting, is the organization, continuing to work on the evaluation, getting to that partnership and be positioned. So TJ and all the senior leaders will be working very hard. But their jobs, although I think they have hard jobs, their staff make it really easy for them, and we are really, really fortunate. Jeff alluded to it. Probably when he gets back to Boulder, the lab will already be up and running, and they'll be like, we've been doing this for 2 days already. Right when you all said aye on that lease, I think they started breaking out the hammers. So I want to thank everyone. I want to thank the team. I want to thank public safety and the partners for what we've done. But we still have a lot more to do. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and there's been an incredible amount of heavy lifting that's occurred to this point, but it pales in comparison to what's coming up. So I will, with that, throw it open for any questions or comments.
Board have any comments or questions for Mike? Good update, I think, from the staff, and I hope everybody, who's listening and in the audience gets a good idea of where we are and where we're going and just what's ahead of us. Again, as with Mike, I appreciate everyone's support of the board, and look forward to what happens in the next couple of months. It's going to be an exciting year. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Madam Chair, just one quick question. If we could tell us when we're going to be meeting again, do we have those dates? I know.
Yeah, those dates are published and actually on the FirstNet.
Right, could we announce them?
Sure, I think that's September 13th and 14th. If you look at firstnet.gov, 13th and 14th is on there, and I think the December is probably the 13th and 14th of December in Sacramento.
Thank you.
Right.
Correct. And we are targeting a conference call board meeting on August 26th.
Right,
but we will publish notifications in the Federal Register and others as that day gets closer.
Right. Good. Any other questions or comments? I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I don't think there is. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any objection? Meeting's closed. Thanks for joining us.